Chapter 245. I've already told you what you should pay attention to. Now, you can act on your own. The 10 purple-robed martial progenitors said to Qin Yu and the others. He then led the 20 white-robed martial progenitors to the edge of the plain. Clearly, it wasn't the first time that the senior disciples of the ancient imperial hall had come here to train. They immediately flew away from the ancient city in groups of 3 to 5. Every time there was a rebellion in the wildlands, it was a great opportunity for them to obtain rewards. After the dragon's soul sensed the fluctuation of the dragon vein, Qin Yu did not hesitate. He flew into the sky and left alone. Zhou Yunlang stepped on the sword radiance and flew away. He disappeared in the blink of an eye. Go! He watched as Qin Yu and Zhou Yunlang left. Li Tianxian, Zhao Junhai, and the others soared into the sky and left. After flying for tens of thousands of miles, the disciples of the ancient imperial hall arrived at the border of the plains. At that moment, a world-shaking battle had already erupted at the border. There were more than 100,000 beasts in the wildlands. Even the weakest among them was a martial god, and there were quite a few martial progenitors among them. The ancient imperial hall had already sent a large number of experts to resist the human warriors. This was the second batch. Other than the ancient imperial hall's martial artists, there were also many martial artists from other forces in the ancient imperial martial world. Savage beasts were full of treasures. Naturally, countless forces in the ancient imperial martial world had their eyes on them. The ancient imperial hall was naturally more than happy to do so. They were even willing to collect the bones of the desolate beasts. Looks like the earth-burrowing technique won't work. After arriving at the border, Qin Yu's gaze swept across the chaotic battlefield. According to the Dragon Soul's perception, the Saint Dragon Vein was to the east of the desolate land. Qin Yu originally wanted to use the earth-burrowing technique to sneak over. However, the desolate beast rampage in front of him had foiled his plans. Those savage beasts had all kinds of attributes from the sky to the earth. If it wasn't for the formation of this plane, ancient imperial hall and the other ancient martial art practitioners probably wouldn't be able to stop such a large number of ferocious beasts. He had to think of another way to pass through these savage beasts. Chi! A figure flew past, rushing towards those savage beasts. It was none other than Zhou Yunlang, who had followed closely behind Meng Hao. He was already attacking the beasts like a senior disciple. The sword was unsheathed, and Swordwolf soared into the sky. The destructive sword light turned into a meteor shower, piercing through the void. Ordinary savage beasts at the peak of the martial god realm could not withstand the power of Zhou Yunlang's sword. Even the senior disciples of the ancient imperial hall were impressed by the combat strength that he had displayed. While Zhou Yunlang was displaying his might, Li Tianxian, Zhao Junhai, and the others would arrive one after another. They immediately joined the battle, causing the already intense battle to become even more desperate. The desolate wilderness ferocious beasts were hunted down one after another. Many human cultivators had also lost their lives. The strength of the ferocious beasts was not to be trifled with. Strange. During the fierce battle, Zhao Junhai's gaze carefully swept across the battlefield. He was looking for Qin Yu's figure. He wanted to take advantage of this berserk beast to kill Qin Yu. However, after looking around, it was as if Qin Yu had disappeared. There was no trace of him at all. Zhao Junhai was not the only one who noticed this. Chun Jiuxing and Chun Zilian, who were besieged by more than 10 desolate wilderness beasts, also noticed that Qin Yu had disappeared. This made them feel strange. With Qin Yu's combat strength, if there were no martial ancestor realm ferocious beasts, he should not have died. Could it be that he had escaped? While Chun Jiuxing and the others were feeling strange, Qin Yu had already charged into the depths of the desolate wilderness beasts. He did not use the earth-burrowing technique to move stealthily. Instead, he used the desolate wilderness secret technique to control the ferocious beasts to cover him. If he could not control them, he would kill them. Therefore, no one noticed that Qin Yu had already left the boundary of the plain and was gradually entering the desolate wilderness. 15 minutes later, Qin Yu passed through more than 100,000 desolate wilderness beasts and flew towards the east of the desolate wilderness. Along the way, he was constantly harassed by the desolate wilderness beasts that were rushing over to reinforce him. At this point, Qin Yu no longer had anything to hide. He went all out. The martial god realm, ancient desolate wilderness beasts were killed with ease. Qin Yu, who had mastered the basic stage of the divine dragon body, could easily defeat martial gods with his flesh alone. Bang! As Qin Yu was controlling a flying desolate wilderness beast, a magnificent aura descended upon him. In a blink of an eye, Qin Yu immediately flew away. Following a loud explosion, the flying desolate wilderness beast exploded into a mist of blood. Had Qin Yu's reaction been a bit slower, he would have likely been seriously injured. A black mist swept toward him. Inside the mist was a desolate wilderness beast the size of a hill. It had the shape of a monkey and was surrounded by a mystical glow. A spiritual monkey beast, second layer martial ancestor realm. Qin Yu took a glimpse and sensed the spiritual monkey beast cultivation. His eyes flickered with battle intent. Great timing. He should make use of this opportunity. He wanted to see how strong his strength was without using any of his secret techniques and abilities. Human, why do you know the sacred art of our desolate wilderness tribe? The spiritual monkey beast was engulfed in a black mist, which transformed into different shapes. Sacred art of the desolate wilderness tribe. The thought crossed Qin Yu's mind. It seemed like the ferocious savage heavenly tiger that he had severely injured had quite a high status in this desolate area. If you're not willing to tell me, I'll have to extract your soul myself. The spiritual monkey beast reached out its hand and grabbed at Qin Yu. The black mist in the center of the monkey beast's palm immediately transformed into a 10,000 zhang tall mountain, suppressing Qin Yu. It was the sacred art of the spiritual monkey beast tribe. When mastered, it could transform into anything in the world. Great! Qin Yu's figure sank slightly as he clenched his fists. A tremendous battle dragon true force flowed into his fists. Strands of divine power would surge out of his flesh, blood, and bones. Bang, bang. He threw a few punches forward. The pale, golden fist radiance, surrounded by dazzling divine light, smashed into the giant mountain with great force. Following a series of explosions, a destructive shockwave swept the place, causing the ground within 1,000 li to tremble vigorously. Within the shockwave, the faint golden fist glow and the mountain were both destroyed. Smiles appeared on their faces. Qin Yu displayed a smile on his face. With the help of the godly dragon tyrannical body, a cultivator below the third layer martial progenitor realm. Even if Qin Yu didn't use his remarkable abilities and secret techniques, he would still be able to contend against them. What kind of sacred art is that? The spiritual monkey beast's eyes widened in disbelief. A martial god realm cultivator had managed to resist its attack with ease? While the spiritual monkey beast was still in a daze, Qin Yu had already lunged forward. His blood and qi became restless, stirring the wind as his flesh emitted a godly glow. Although the spiritual monkey beast was astounded, a martial progenitor realm cultivator would not be intimidated by a mere martial god. Bang, bang, bang. The two tore the rift apart and fought with one another. God force swept across the place and swept across the place. The space was completely destroyed. Any beast below the martial progenitor realm that was caught in it would surely die. It's about time to end this. After a few hundred rounds of battle, Qin Yu, who had confirmed the strength of the divine dragon body, gradually emitted a faint blue dragon aura from his body. Chapter 246. Roar. A faint roar of a dragon could be heard coming from Qin Yu's body. The dragon's roar was extremely intimidating. It was executed by the azure dragon battling the heavens. The monkey-like savage beast was astounded. Dragon might, although the savage beasts were different from the beasts, they were still beasts. Facing the true might of the dragon tribe, the savage beast would be intimidated and its bloodline would be suppressed. Bang! Qin Yu clenched his right fist and took a step forward, covering a distance of 100 zhang and appearing before the monkey-like savage beast. The true origin and god force in his fist combined into a destructive fist glow. Crap! The monkey-like savage beast was astounded. It immediately unleashed a mystical glow. The rules of the heavens and earth gathered at a single point and lashed out. As long as it could stall Yu for a moment, it was confident that it would be able to escape. The monkey-like savage beast no longer had the intention to battle Yu. Yu's cultivation was definitely not as simple as the martial god realm. Crack! However, as soon as the two attacks collided, the monkey-like savage beast's mystical ability was shattered. The godly fist was extremely powerful. After shattering the mystical ability, it struck the monkey-like savage beast's forehead, causing blood to splatter everywhere. The monkey-like savage beast was dead. With Yu's current cultivation, he was able to execute the Azure Dragon battling the heavens. He could easily slay an Earth-ranked martial progenitor if he were to use mystical abilities and killing formations to assist him. Even an advanced martial progenitor would not be able to do anything to him. After slaying the monkey-like savage beast, Yu retrieved its remains and immediately flew away. Not long after Yu left, numerous astonishing auras began to converge from all directions. They were all martial progenitor realm beasts. They were enraged when they sensed the death of the monkey-like savage beast. A martial progenitor realm human had infiltrated their desolate land. The savage beast tribe could not tolerate this. They immediately tried to track down Yu's whereabouts. At this moment, Yu had already ventured deep into the wildlands. Not long after, he found the sacred dragon vein in a mountain range that was filled with countless desolate beasts. With a flash of his body, Yu charged into that mountain range. This caused countless savage beasts to be shaken, and a shocking battle broke out. More than half of the mountain range was destroyed. After leaving behind the corpses of over 100 savage beasts, the remaining savage beasts fled in panic. Many martial progenitor realm savage beasts are surrounding us. Within the divine dragon ancient seal, the dragon's soul spoke, its voice slightly solemn. Yu's current strength was indeed enough to face an advanced martial progenitor. However, this was the wildlands. The ancient imperial palace had unified the entire ancient imperial martial world, but they still couldn't exterminate the savage beasts. Clearly, the ancient imperial palace was unable to destroy the Manxing land with their current strength. That was why he had set up such a huge sealing array. This was enough to show the strength of the ferocious beasts in the wildlands. If they were trapped, it wouldn't be easy for them to throw in their lot with the Demon Emperor. Yu naturally sensed that many martial progenitor realm savage beasts were surrounding them. However, now that the sacred dragon vein was right in front of him, Yu could not let it go. With a flash of light, his body immediately entered the ground. This aura, however, after entering the ground, Yu and the dragon's soul sensed something. They discovered that there was an extremely terrifying aura in the sacred dragon vein. The aura far surpassed the martial progenitor realm. Martial monarch realm? Yu was shocked. This dragon vein was actually the place where a martial emperor had passed away. Curious, Yu's speed became even faster, and he quickly arrived before the sacred dragon vein. The sacred dragon vein covered an area of tens of thousands of miles, and a pure dragon chi that was visible to the naked eye surged. It looked like a giant dragon that had been imprisoned, and no matter how it struggled, it could not break free from the shackles of the ground. Dragon veins were sentient, and they could move around on their own. It was said that in ancient times, there were stories of dragon veins being sentient and transforming into dragons. There was an ancient copper mirror in the giant dragon vein. The copper mirror was dark blue as if it were made of bronze, and it emitted a mysterious blue glow. It was because of that ancient copper mirror that the holy dragon vein had been trapped here all this time. Is the copper mirror absorbing the power of the dragon vein? The dragon soul was startled. He could sense the dragon chi of the sacred dragon vein flowing into the copper mirror. Yu squinted his eyes and flew closer. His initial plan was to detain the dragon vein and leave immediately. However, the dragon vein was now being suppressed by the ancient copper mirror. He had to figure out what was going on with the ancient copper mirror. Although the ancient copper mirror was emitting a weak aura, you could still tell. The power of the ancient copper mirror greatly surpassed that of a sacred weapon. It was very likely to be a god weapon. God weapons were basically exclusive to martial monarchs. Even if a martial progenitor realm cultivator obtained one, they would not be able to use it. This confirmed Qin Yu's speculation. This was indeed the place where a martial monarch died. Whoosh! The moment Qin Yu entered the dragon vein and approached the ancient copper mirror, a terrifying suction force instantly enveloped Qin Yu. It was so fast that Qin Yu could not react at all. Qin Yu could vaguely see a mysterious world. Immortal Qi lingered there. Giant mountains towered into the sky, and divine beasts flew. It was like a paradise. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Almost instantly, the ancient dragon seal in Qin Yu's mind trembled on its own. A mysterious pressure was emitted from his body. Qin Yu was devoured by the suction force. However, the ancient copper mirror was also affected by the ancient dragon seal's aura, and the ancient runes on it became chaotic. The suction force turned into a beam of light that shot out of the ground and into the clouds. Everywhere it passed, the ancient mirror devoured everything. The sacred dragon vein could not escape and was directly devoured. In the suction force, there was a supreme, domineering aura that filled the desolate land. Even the entire ancient imperial martial world sensed it. That is, the barbarian god's aura. The barbarian god's ruins have appeared. The martial progenitor realm savage beasts that were chasing Qin Yu were extremely shocked when they saw the devouring light beam. Under the intense shock, they could not suppress the excitement on their faces. They could feel the aura of the barbarian god from their desolate land from the light beam. Although the savage beasts in the desolate land were all kings, and there were endless internal conflicts. When the barbarian god was alive, the desolate land had been completely unified. That was when the desolate land was at its peak, and its forces covered 2/3 of the ancient imperial martial world. Unfortunately, the barbarian god had a great battle with a mysterious demon a few hundred years ago and was severely injured. In the end, he passed away in the sacred dragon vein. In the past few hundred years, countless savage beast experts had sneaked into the dragon vein to obtain the barbarian god's inheritance. However, everyone who had entered the dragon vein had disappeared without a trace. No one knew if they were alive or dead. Who would have thought that the barbarian god's ruins would appear now? This naturally made the savage beasts of the desolate land overjoyed. They madly charged toward the suction light beam. What's that? Could some treasure have appeared in the depths of the desolate land? Look, the martial progenitor realm savage beasts are retreating. As the savage beasts of the desolate land rushed toward the barbarian god's ruins. On the plains where the battle was taking place, the human cultivators of the ancient imperial martial world also noticed the light beam that shot into the sky and devoured everything. Chapter 247. Even the beasts have retreated. Something must have happened in the depths of the wilderness. What should we do? Should we continue to guard this place? Or should we go and investigate? The wilderness has always been mysterious. Since we've encountered such a rare phenomenon, we can't miss it. The purple-robed martial progenitors of the ancient imperial palace discussed for a while before flying into the depths of the wilderness. The white-robed martial progenitors exchanged glances with one another before flying into the sky. After all, with the formation in the wilderness, they would be able to return in time to guard the wilderness even if the beasts attacked. Sister, can you see what that beam of light is? Chun Jiuxing flew to Chun Zilian's side among the disciples of the ancient imperial palace and transmitted his voice. Chun Zilian raised her head and looked at the beam of light soaring into the sky. Her eyes emitted a dazzling white light, as if she was trying to see through the beam of light. After a while, the white light in Chun Zilian's eyes dissipated and she shook her head. The beam of light was covered by a terrifying force, so she couldn't see through it. Let's go and take a look. Chun Zilian pondered for a while before flying into the depths of the wilderness with Chun Jiuxing. Among the senior disciples of the ancient imperial hall, the stronger ones also followed behind. Among the new disciples, Zhou Yunlang had already flown out on his sword. Li Tianxian and Zhao Junhai followed behind. Many of the new disciples split into two groups and flew into the depths of the wilderness. The cultivators from the other factions couldn't wait any longer and followed behind. However, along the way, many disciples of the ancient imperial palace and cultivators from the other factions turned back. The reason was that there were too many martial progenitor realm beasts in the wilderness that had barged into the beam of light. They only took one look and immediately retreated, no matter what was in the beam of light. Now that so many martial progenitors had rushed in, it was impossible for them to interfere. That being said, not all the disciples of the ancient imperial palace retreated. Chun Jiuxing, Chun Zilian, Zhou Yunlang, Li Tianxian, and the others had already charged into the beam of light. As the beam of light soared into the sky, the entire ancient imperial martial world shook. Countless factions had sent their martial progenitor realm experts to the desolated area. At this time, in the god-burying ridge of the hunter martial world that was millions of miles away from the ancient imperial martial world. Inside the ancient palace, which was filled with boundless devil power and surging devil chi, a figure that was sitting cross-legged suddenly opened his eyes. His pitch-black eyes were as unfathomable as before. They were like a terrifying vortex that could swallow the heavens and devour the earth. This person was the ancient demon sovereign that had been sealed beneath God-burying ridge's ancient ruins. At some point in time, the demon sovereign had broken free of the 9 ghost-patterned shackles and successfully escaped. God of barbarians, after the demon lord opened his eyes, he looked in the direction of the ancient imperial martial world and muttered to himself. In the next moment, he took a step forward and disappeared from the ancient palace. At this moment, at the peak of a huge mountain, Qin Yu stood in the air and looked around. Clouds and mist swirled around him, making him look like a paradise on earth. Qin Yu was very sure that he was in the space of the ancient bronze mirror. The ancient bronze mirror wasn't a spatial treasure. Therefore, this space of the ruins was opened up by someone. That Saint Dragon vein was also sucked in. However, it has broken free of the seal and is now hiding. I can only sense its approximate location. The dragon soul in the divine dragon ancient seal that used the secret technique said after a long time, as long as it's in this mystic realm, it can't escape. Qin Yu flew into the sky and flew in the direction the dragon soul sensed. Although the Saint Dragon vein had gained intelligence, it was still a Saint Dragon vein. However, it was only a Saint Heavenly Sovereign after all. Its intelligence was not high and it only knew how to hide. If its intelligence was completely awakened, it should think of a way to rush out of this space of the ruins. This space of the ruins was extremely large. With Qin Yu's speed, he flew for more than 2 hours and still couldn't see the end. In the depths of the ruins, there was a strong barbarian pressure that spread out like waves. The barbarian powerhouses that came in a steady stream all rushed directly into the depths of the ruins. Obviously, they were all aiming for the barbarian pressure. Quick, seal it! Be careful, don't destroy the origin of the dragon vein. When Qin Yu arrived at the place where the Saint Dragon vein was hidden, there were already many ferocious beasts gathered here, trying to seal the Saint Dragon vein. To the ferocious beasts, if they could get enough dragon chi to cleanse them, then they might be reborn. In the past, countless ferocious beasts had tried to get their hands on the Saint Dragon vein. However, they were all absorbed by the bronze mirror, and no one succeeded. Now, for some unknown reason, the bronze mirror had become chaotic and sucked in the Saint Dragon vein. Naturally, they wouldn't miss such a great opportunity. A human? A mere martial god dares to barge into the sacred place where the barbarian god passed away. You should die. Qin Yu's arrival was immediately discovered by the ferocious beasts that were sealing the dragon vein. The leaders of the ferocious beasts were 5 martial progenitors that had taken human form but still had the characteristics of a ferocious beast. They glanced at Qin Yu coldly and waved their hands when they saw Qin Yu's cultivation was only in the martial god realm. More than 10 martial god realm ferocious beasts immediately lunged at Qin Yu with strong murderous intent. Die! Qin Yu stepped into the air and clenched his hands into fists. A strong true energy and a vast god force gathered. Bang, bang, bang. Fist glows with godly glows tore through the sky like meteors with shocking might. Before the martial god realm ferocious beasts could react, they were killed by the fist glows. This guy. The 5 ferocious beasts in human form were astounded. A 3rd-layer martial god had killed more than 10 advanced martial god realm ferocious beasts in an instant. The strength Qin Yu had displayed had completely overturned their understanding of the martial god realm. It seems like this kid is special among the human geniuses. Kill. The 5 martial progenitor realm ferocious beasts soon collected their thoughts. They had seen quite a number of human geniuses. However, it was their first time seeing someone as monstrous as Qin Yu. Their eyes flickered with a strong, murderous intent. Qin Yu had to die. Otherwise, with his outstanding talent, he would surely become a martial progenitor in the future. An expert who could take on multiple opponents at the same time, or even those with higher cultivation levels. Bang, bang. The 5 martial progenitor realm ferocious beasts stopped sealing the dragon vein. The rules of the heavens and earth rumbled vigorously, as if a volcano had erupted or a tsunami was approaching. That shocking destructive power caused the surrounding barbarian tribe beasts to be extremely terrified, and they had no choice but to retreat far away. For symbols suppressing the heavens. Facing the 5 martial progenitor realm ferocious beasts, Qin Yu stood in the air without dodging. In the center of his left palm, mysterious and profound spirit tattoos spread out. The formation disc that had evolved into a sacred weapon appeared with a unique aura. Bang, 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 bang. Following this, the sky shook vigorously. 4 ancient light formations over 100 zhang wide descended from the sky like 4 ancient gods of battle, suppressing the rift within 1,000 zhang from them. The 5 martial progenitor realm ferocious beasts were immediately sealed off by the 4 ancient glowing formations. Qin Yu's figure disappeared from the 4 guardians' heaven-suppressing formation with a flicker and appeared in front of the sacred dragon vein. Chapter 248. Damn it! Quick, stop him! The 5 transformed savage beasts knew that they had fallen into Qin Yu's trap. As he attacked the 4 elephants' heaven-suppressing formation with his full power, he ordered those ferocious beasts to block Qin Yu. Dragon Soul, Qin Yu yelled when he saw the savage beasts charging at him from all directions. A dragon roar was heard as the Dragon Soul appeared from the ancient seal of the divine dragon. It was 100 zhang tall and emitted a mighty dragon aura. The sacred dragon vein that was about to escape trembled in fear before the true dragon aura of the Dragon Soul. Dragon? The ferocious beasts that were pouncing over also looked at the Dragon Soul in shock. They did not expect to see the legendary dragon tribe with their own eyes. Even the 5 transformed martial progenitor realm savage beasts could not hide their astonishment. But soon, the shock on their faces was replaced by fervent looks, and greed surged in their eyes. The Dragon Soul's scales glowed as it charged into the sacred dragon vein. Primal chaos dragon aura spread and swept out, covering the entire dragon vein. Then, the same dragon vein was quickly swallowed by the chaotic dragon aura. The chaotic dragon chi was the origin dragon world of the Dragon Soul. Oh no! The savage beasts that were intimidated by the Dragon Soul immediately charged at the Dragon Soul to stop it from taking away the sacred dragon vein. Qin Yu would not let them do as they wished. The divine force in his flesh and bones glowed brightly. It was as if the god of death had descended and killed the savage beasts. Roar! Another deafening dragon roar was heard as the Dragon Soul sucked the sacred dragon vein into the origin dragon world. Boom! Almost instantly, the four guardians' heaven-suppressing formation was destroyed by the five transformed martial progenitor realm savage beasts. Their auras were like rainbows. The laws of heaven and earth condensed, completely sealing this world and imprisoning the dragon's soul. Compared to the holy dragon vein, the dragon soul, a living dragon race member, was much more attractive to them. Whoosh! The dragon soul did not even look at the five transformed savage beasts as it plunged into the origin dragon world. The five transformed martial progenitor realm savage beasts could only watch as the origin dragon world disappeared. No matter what they did, they couldn't seal the origin dragon world. The origin dragon world appeared within the divine dragon ancient seal. The dragon soul brought the saint-grade dragon vein out of the origin dragon world. Hand over the dragon race and the dragon vein, and we'll give you a quick death. After witnessing the disappearance of the origin dragon, the five transformed martial progenitor realm beasts fixed their gazes on Xinyu. Killing intent swept out like a hurricane, shaking the heavens and earth. Just a bunch of low-ranked martial progenitors, and they still think that they're very powerful. A sneer appeared on Qinyu's face. He had only sealed them with the four guardians' heaven-suppressing formation. It was because capturing the dragon vein was more important. But now that the dragon vein was in his hands, Qinyu had nothing to hold him back anymore. Then go to hell. The five transformed martial progenitor realm savage beasts unleashed their murderous intent. They unleashed their most powerful divine powers and secret arts, which were imbued with the destructive laws of heaven and earth, as they charged towards Qinyu. Ignorant. The sneer on Qinyu's face grew wider. A blue dragon aura rose from his body as the cries of dragons gathered on his palm. His skin was covered in pitch-black dragon scales. He immediately executed the heaven-battling azure dragon, the sky-devouring dragon seal, and the 9 serenities purgatory. In the pitch-black purgatory, the 5 transformed martial progenitor realm savage beasts lost their lives one after another. They didn't even manage to discover Qinyu's silhouette before they died. Qinyu had already mastered the dragon god tyrannical body. The heaven-battling azure dragon, the sky-devouring dragon seal, and the 9 serenities purgatory were enough to slay low-ranked martial progenitors without using their full strength. Puff, puff, puff. After killing the 5 transformed savage beasts, Qinyu dashed toward the martial god realm savage beasts like an arrow. In just an instant, all the savage beasts were slain. Even though Qinyu had yet to fully execute the divine powers of the dragon tribe, the savage beasts had witnessed it. However, these ferocious beasts of the wilderness have also seen it. Naturally, Qinyu cannot let them live. After confirming that there was no one around, Qinyu flew away at extremely fast speed. Soon, he disappeared without a trace. In an ancient mountain, Qinyu used the earth movement art to enter the bottom of the mountain and set up several formations. Dragon Soul, how big is your origin dragon world now? The dragon soul entered the divine dragon ancient seal and summoned the origin dragon world and the primal chaos dragon world, about 10,000 zhang wide. The dragon soul brought Qinyu into the chaos dragon world. The chaos dragon chief floated in the chaos dragon world as if it was a newly created chaos world. It's too small. I'll refine 1/10 of this sacred dragon vein and use the rest to strengthen the chaos dragon world, Qinyu said as he left the chaos dragon world. In order to establish the eternal dragon nation, Qinyu had to use the dragon soul's origin dragon world. Therefore, strengthening the dragon soul's origin dragon world was of the utmost importance. 10,000 zhang wide was not considered big for a human, let alone a dragon. At the very least, the dragon soul's original body was more than 10,000 zhang wide. All right. The dragon soul's scales glowed as it refined 9/10 of the sacred dragon vein into the origin dragon world. Qinyu did not hesitate as he controlled the divine dragon seal to refine the remaining dragon vein energy. As the vast and boundless dragon aura entered his body, Qinyu's cultivation rapidly increased. As Qinyu refined the dragon chi, He used it to comprehend the 5 ultimacies. Half a day later, Qin Yu's cultivation broke through 2 levels and reached the LV5 martial god realm. The dragon chi in the sacred dragon vein was so pure that it contained the power of heaven and earth. It was of great help to one's comprehension of the ultimacies of heaven and earth. If the dragon vein had not been sealed for hundreds of years, it might have evolved into a sacred dragon vein. After his cultivation had broken through, Qin Yu left the divine dragon seal. He sat on the bottom of the mountain and waited for the dragon soul to evolve. With the power of the sacred dragon vein's dragon chi, the dragon soul's strength would undergo a great transformation. It would be of great help to Qin Yu when he returned to the ancient imperial palace to subdue the golden flame, sky-incinerating dragon. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. More than half a month had passed in the divine dragon seal, as the dragon soul cultivated with the help of the space-time power. After more than half a month, the dragon soul finally refined the sacred dragon vein. Qin Yu entered the divine dragon seal again. The dragon soul's chaotic dragon world had grown from 10,000 zhang wide to a few thousand li wide. The dragon soul's cultivation had also broken through to the LV7 martial god realm from the martial god realm. The dragon soul's cultivation was different from Qin Yu's. The dragon soul did not need to comprehend the ultimacies of heaven and earth. As long as it had enough dragon chi, it could continue to grow stronger. The dragon soul's origin superpower would continue to be comprehended and broken through as its cultivation grew stronger. This was the advantage of the dragon tribe as a sentient life form. However, because of this, the dragon tribe's cultivation was extremely slow. This was because every time they broke through to a new level, they would need a huge amount of dragon chi. The dragon chi that the dragon soul had refined previously. If it was given to other demonic tribes or savage beasts, they would probably reach the peak of the martial god realm. The dragon world has been completely stabilized. The dragon soul brought Qin Yu and carefully sensed the situation of the chaotic dragon world. The chaotic dragon world, which had only been filled with chaotic dragon chi, had now evolved into mountains and rivers. There was a lot of vitality. After a few more transformations, the chaotic dragon world would become a world of its own and become a real dragon world. Chapter 249. Boom! Suddenly, an earth-shattering explosion came from afar. The entire ancient remains began to shake violently. As for the enormous mountain peak that Qin Yu was on, it directly ruptured and collapsed. Qin Yu's figure flickered as he looked into the distance. He was looking in the direction of the ancient ruins. The barbarian's aura that Qin Yu had sensed earlier was more than 10 times stronger. Such a powerful aura. Could it be left behind by a martial emperor? The dragon soul in the ancient dragon seal guessed. The aura was obviously stronger than the peak of the martial ancestor realm. However, it had not reached the limit of the martial emperor realm. The dragon soul guessed that it could be a martial emperor. Let's go and take a look. Qin Yu immediately flies into the air and heads for the depths of the remnants. If there was a martial emperor, it would be a great opportunity for him. Qin Yu's cultivation had broken through 2 levels, and his combat strength had increased by more than 2 levels. Even if he encountered danger, he could still retreat. 2 hours later, when Qin Yu was 1,000 miles away, a group of people flew toward him. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. Qin Yu focused his eyes and took a look. A cold expression appeared on his face. The group of people who flew over in a sorry state was none other than Zhao Junhai from the Heavenly Martial Palace. Qin Yu had wanted to kill Zhao Junhai when he was in the ancient Imperial Palace, although he did not know why Zhao Junhai wanted to get rid of him. However, Qin Yu would not give any face to the people who wanted to kill him. Shin Feng? Seeing Qin Yu flying over, Zhao Junhai was also startled. Qin Yu, who had been missing, had also entered the ancient ruins? Great! But soon, Zhao Junhai's face was filled with murderous intent. This was not the ancient imperial palace, and Chun Jiuxing and his brother were not in the way. It was the best time to get rid of Qin Yu. as long as he got rid of Qin Yu's divine body. That would mean that he had eliminated one of his biggest competitors among the disciples of the ancient imperial hall. Brat, no one can save you now. Let's see if you still dare to be so arrogant. Zhao Juanhai's face twisted as he waved his hand. The dozen or so disciples following him immediately surrounded Qin Yu with murderous intent. Although they were disciples of the ancient imperial palace, they were all arranged by the celestial martial king manner. Naturally, they would follow Zhao Juanhai's orders. I would also like to see where exactly your killing intent came from. Qin Yu's figure flashed, directly pouncing towards Zhao Juanhai. He did not think that Zhao Juanhai would want to kill him just because of his good aptitude. There must be other reasons for this. This might be related to the fact that 3 of the top 5 kings' palaces had sent their geniuses into the ancient imperial palace. Die! The martial God Realm disciples surrounding Qin Yu immediately charged forward to intercept Qin Yu. Pung pung pung. Qin Yu's eyes were cold as he continuously punched out with his fists. Rays of faint golden fist radiance flickered in the void. They were like golden meteors that streaked across the sky. It was beautiful and full of killing intent. The ultimacies of heaven and earth around the dozen martial God Realm disciples exploded, and a bloody hole appeared on each of their bodies. Blood flowed out, and their flesh exploded. Even their spiritual souls were destroyed. How is this possible? Zhao Juanhai's face was twisted with murderous intent. His body was emitting golden light as he prepared to execute his killing move. Seeing this, his eyes popped out, and he was dumbfounded. More than a dozen martial gods of level 8 and 9 had been instantly killed by Qin Yu. He had fought with Qin Yu before and knew that Qin Yu had the strength to fight against a peak martial god. However, he could fight against a peak martial god and kill a martial god of level 8 and 9 with ease. These were 2 completely different things. Could it be that Qin Yu's strength had made such a shocking breakthrough in just a few days? Zhao Junai had guessed it right. Qin Yu's battle power had reached a breakthrough earlier. The divine dragon body was the 3rd form of the 9 secrets of the immemorial battle dragon. Similar to the azure dragon battling the heavens and the sky-devouring dragon seal. It would grow stronger as Qin Yu's cultivation improved. When he was still a 3rd-layer martial god, Qin Yu was already able to fight against a 2nd-layer martial progenitor. Now that he had achieved the 5th-layer martial god realm, the improvement of his strength was even more terrifying. Bang! Qin Yu did not stop because of Zhao Juanhai's astonishment. He threw his right hand forward, causing the rift to tremble. Protection of the godly weapon. Zhao Juanhai's eyes widened as his hair stood on its end. He immediately took out an ancient talisman with the power of the rules of the heavens and earth. As the ancient talisman appeared, it immediately transformed into an ancient general over 10 zhang tall with a giant saber in his hand, looming over Zhao Junhai. Whoosh! Qin Yu's divine light fist ray was struck by the ancient general's blade from the sky. The fist glow exploded, causing the figure of the ancient general to tremble vigorously. The attacks from the 2 sides canceled each other out. You're trying to kill me? Do you know who I am? What are the consequences of killing me? Zhao Juanhai's face changed greatly when he saw the explosive power of the divine light fist. That was if the power of the fist light wasn't offset. He would have been severely injured even if he did not die. Qin Yu really dared to kill him? When you try to kill me, your fate was sealed. No matter who you are, you're going to die for sure. Qin Yu glanced at the ancient general with a cold gaze. The ancient battle talisman was a branch of the talisman art. The ancient battle talisman was refined by a martial progenitor. Thus, it contained the rules of the heavens and earth. It was most likely given to Zhao Junhai by the celestial martial emperor palace to protect himself. With the ancient battle talisman, ordinary martial progenitors would not be able to kill Zhao Junhai with ease. However, it was useless against Qin Yu. The ancient battle talisman was still too naive in front of him. Roar! A blue dragon aura appeared vaguely inside Qin Yu's body. Qin Yu's aura skyrocketed instantly. It rose from the 5th-layer martial god realm to the peak martial god realm in the blink of an eye, before reaching the martial progenitor realm. What the hell? Martial progenitor? Zhao Juanhai's expression stiffened as several ancient talismans appeared in his hand. Anyone who saw this scene would be shocked beyond words. The invisible barrier between the martial god realm and the martial progenitor realm. It had stopped countless martial gods from reaching the martial progenitor realm. However, Qin Yu was able to break through the barrier and achieve the martial progenitor realm with ease. This was simply too shocking. Bang! The last thing Zhao Junhai saw was a godly glow filling the heavens and earth like a scorching sun. As soon as the godly glow came into contact with his body, he lost consciousness. Soul refining. After shattering the ancient battle talisman, Qin Yu extracted Zhao Junhai's soul from his body the moment he killed him. Soon, Qin Yu found out why the princes of the top royal palaces would enter the ancient imperial palace. It was because no one from the ancient imperial palace had triggered the succession of the three emperors. Therefore, the ancient imperial palace had decided to recruit powerful geniuses during this once-in-a-decade recruitment. They would focus on selecting those with outstanding talents and nurturing them to become the princes of the ancient emperors. In the history of the ancient imperial palace, whenever there was a gap in the succession of the ancient emperors, they would nurture the princes of the ancient emperors. Normally, there would be 3 to 5 princes of the ancient emperors. In the end, one of them would be acknowledged by the succession of the ancient emperors. This was the reason why Zhao Junhai and Li Tianxian wanted to kill Qin Yu. Among the disciples of the ancient imperial palace, only Qin Yu, who had a god-level talent, could surpass them in terms of talent. Chapter 250. The son of the ancient emperor. His first senior brother had never mentioned this before. It seemed that this should be a secret of the ancient imperial palace that had not been made public. The reason why Zhao Junhai and the others knew was naturally because they had already sent people to infiltrate the ancient imperial palace. Needless to say, Qin Yu could also guess it. Their plan should be to prepare to become the son of the ancient emperor and then obtain the recognition of the ancient emperor's inheritance. From then on, they would rightfully sit on the throne of the ancient emperor. It was no wonder that among the 5 top martial imperial palaces, 3 imperial palaces had sent out their innate sword body and saint body aptitude. The other 2 imperial palaces did not make a move. Either they knew that they could not compete with the geniuses of their imperial palaces, or they had other plans. In short, the situation of the ancient imperial palace was as Qin Yu had understood. It was constantly turbulent. After killing Zhao Junhai and the others, Qin Yu did not change his direction and continued to fly towards the depths of the ruins at top speed. However, just as Zhao Junhai's soul was about to scatter, in the southwest region of the ancient imperial martial world, there was an incomparably magnificent giant city that covered an area of 10,000 miles. The giant city was completely black, like an ancient giant beast that made people feel intimidated. This ancient city was one of the top 5 imperial palaces in the martial imperial martial world, the Celestial Imperial Palace. Therefore, the city was named Celestial City. Boom! Suddenly, an unparalleled killing intent soared into the sky from a magnificent palace in the center of the giant city. All the cultivators in Sky Peak City felt their hearts trembling as they were endlessly shocked. What a terrifying killing intent. Is it the Celestial Imperial Palace? In the entire Celestial City, only the Celestial Imperial Palace could have such earth-shattering power. The martial artists in Celestial City all started to discuss spiritedly. They did not know what had happened. To be able to make the Celestial Imperial Palace, who was famous in the 7 great martial worlds, erupt with such killing intent. At this moment, in the martial imperial palace at the center, a middle-aged man in a golden robe with extraordinary power looked at a piece of divine jade in his hand with a gloomy face. The spiritual inscriptions on the divine jade had already cracked, and the light that was originally shining gradually dimmed. This middle-aged man was the Celestial Imperial Palace, Zhao Mingyan. Who on earth killed my son? The killing intent in Zhao Mingtian's eyes condensed. Although he had more than 10 children, the one with the most outstanding aptitude was undoubtedly Zhao Junhai, an 8th grade Saint Body. If he had the opportunity in the future, he might be able to break through to the Emperor realm. Therefore, he asked Zhao Junhai to go to the ancient imperial palace. If he became the son of the Emperor of the Ancients and received the Emperor of the Ancients' inheritance, he would be able to do so. Then, the chances of stabilizing the martial Emperor realm in the future would be much higher. Who would have thought that his son would die at this time? Could it be that the ancient imperial hall had killed his son? But soon, Zhao Mingtian dispelled this thought. The ancient imperial hall had seen through his intentions of sending Zhao Junhai to the ancient imperial hall. He would not attack his son at this time. Immediately, Zhao Mingtian's hands moved continuously, forming a series of mysterious seals. The divine jade, which had dimmed, once again emitted a faint divine light. Within the divine light, a blurry figure appeared. Zhao Mingtian's eyes flashed with a shocking chill. It was this figure who had killed his son. Your Highness, I've already investigated. There was a riot in the Wildlands, so the Crown Prince and the disciples of the ancient Imperial Hall went to the Wildlands together. At this moment, a figure flew over and reported respectfully. It was a peak martial ancestor of the 8th level martial ancestor realm. When he sensed Zhao Junhai's death, he immediately went to investigate. He knew that Zhao Junhai had gone to the Wildlands. Personally bring people to the Wildlands. You must capture this person for me. Zhao Mingtian flicked his finger, and the divine jade flew to the figure as he said in a cold voice. No matter who this person was, he wanted to capture him and put him to death. He wanted to extract his soul and refine it so that he would never be reincarnated. Yes, the peak martial ancestor accepted the order and immediately left the celestial martial imperial palace. Rumble, in the barbarian god relic. The closer he got to the core area, the earth-shattering battle was getting more and more intense. Qin Yu, who was constantly flying over, had no choice but to stop at the peak of a giant mountain. On the ground in front of him, there was an area filled with black fog. That black fog, he did not know what kind of power it was. It could actually suppress soul perception. No one could detect what was happening inside. However, there was one thing he was sure of. An intense battle was taking place inside the black fog that covered an area of over 10,000 li. Judging from the laws of the heavens and earth, it was obvious that the people involved in the battle were all martial ancestors. Judging from the elemental ripples of the laws of the heavens and earth, there were at least a few dozen martial ancestors. Qin Yu was confident in his strength. However, he still felt that it was better not to barge into the chaotic battle between a few dozen martial ancestors. Qin Yu did not want to expose all his trump cards in front of the crowd. Whoosh! Right at the moment when Qin Yu was observing, a figure rapidly flew out from the black fog. The person was none other than the descendant of the ancient emperor, Chun Jiuxing. However, judging from Chun Jiuxing's appearance and his continuous coughing up blood, it was obvious that he was severely injured. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 7 figures followed closely behind Chun Jiuxing and flew into the sky. Qin Yu glanced at them. Although they were wearing the uniform of the disciples of the ancient imperial palace, they were the followers of the ancient imperial palace. However, those disciples were all followers of Li Tianxian. In other words, they were from the Black Ice Martial Royal Mansion. The people of the Black Ice Martial Mansion dared to chase after the ancient emperor's men. Qin Yu raised his brows. He had expected the Black Ice Martial Royal Mansion to rebel so quickly. Gravity, Earth, Boundary. The figures quickly caught up to Chun Jiuxing and joined hands to form an earthy yellow ward. A powerful gravitational force suddenly descended. Boom! Chun Jiuxing, who was already severely injured, was immediately suppressed and fell from the sky, smashing a deep hole in the ground. Chun Jiuxing coughed up blood and struggled violently. However, he was unable to get up. Senior brother Chun, you know that you have nowhere to run. Why are you still struggling? Let us send you on your way. The few disciples of the ancient imperial palace sneered as they landed on the ground. Cough, cough. Tell Li Tianxian that the Black Ice Martial Mansion will be buried with me sooner or later. Chen Jiuxing glared at the martial God Realm disciples. If it was any other time, he could easily crush these disciples. However, he was currently in the middle of the barbarian god ruins and was attacked by a martial ancestor. He had only managed to survive after exhausting all his means. Naturally, he was no match for these martial god realm disciples. The sneers on the martial god realm disciples' faces deepened. The ruins had attracted countless martial ancestor and martial god realm beasts from the barbarian land. Whether it was the ancient imperial palace or the other forces in the ancient imperial martial world, they had all suffered heavy casualties. If Chen Jiuxing died in the ruins, no one would know that it was the Black Ice Martial Mansion who had killed him. Without wasting any time, they immediately used their heaven and earth intents to kill Chen Jiuxing. Puff, 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 puff. However, at this moment, a beam of starry divine light suddenly appeared. The gravity-earth boundary was easily shattered. The martial God Realm disciples were penetrated in the head by the godly rays, causing them to fall to the ground and perish. Who's there? As soon as the gravity-earth boundary was broken, Chen Jiuxing immediately got up and looked at the sky where the starlight had appeared. In that direction, a figure was walking through the air towards them. Chapter 251. Junior Brother, Shun Feng. After taking a closer look, Chen Jiuxing's eyes flickered with joy. The person walking toward them was none other than Qin Yu. How did you end up like this? Qin Yu landed and handed Chen Jiuxing a bottle of pills. If it were someone else, Qin Yu would not be so nosy. However, Li Tianxian had tried to kill him, and Chen Jiuxing was the descendant of the ancient emperor. Qin Yu had saved his life. I asked for it. Chen Jiuxing let out a wry smile as he received the pills. It turned out that after following the martial progenitor realm elder of the ancient imperial palace into the barbarian god's remains, Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian had sensed the presence of a powerful sacred weapon. Therefore, the two had sneaked into the black mist at the core of the ancient ruins. However, for some reason, a chaotic battle between martial progenitors had broken out in the black mist. The two siblings were unfortunately involved in the battle and were separated. While fleeing, Chen Jiuxing was unlucky enough to stumble into a martial progenitor realm savage beast. Although he had managed to escape with the help of the martial progenitor realm of the ancient imperial palace, he was severely injured. Most importantly, the people of the Black Ice Martial Imperial Palace had appeared out of nowhere to hunt him down. If it weren't for Qin Yu's timely appearance, he would have lost his life. Could there really be a martial monarch spirit here that could make dozens of martial progenitors fight for it? Qin Yu did not sense the presence of the sacred weapon that Chen Jiuxing had mentioned. However, if it was only a Saint artifact, then it would be impossible. Qin Yu did not think it would make dozens of martial progenitors fight for it. The aura that was growing stronger and clearer might really be the force of a martial monarch spirit. Upon having this thought, Qin Yu's eyes flickered passionately. Although the dragon blood was what he wanted the most, the martial monarch spirit was still beneficial to him. Qin Yu's soul had only recovered to the level of his god spirit. If he were to acquire a martial monarch spirit, it would greatly improve the recovery of his soul. Whoosh! All of a sudden, Qin Yu's expression flickered, and he took Chen Jiuxing into the ground at lightning speed. Almost at the same time, the ground they were standing on exploded. After the earth and rocks were scattered in all directions, a large crater that was several hundred feet deep appeared. Over 30 transformed martial progenitor realm savage beasts charged toward Qinan. They glanced indifferently at the deep pit. Without stopping, they immediately charged into the rolling black fog. After the more than 30 transformed savage beasts flew into the black mist, Li Mu's expression changed drastically. Qin Yu brought Chen Jiuxing out from the edge of the crater. Luckily, I avoided it in time. Chen Jiuxing's heart palpitated, and cold sweat appeared on his face. Fortunately, Qin Yu's reaction was fast enough. Otherwise, they were afraid that a great disaster would befall them. It seems like more martial progenitors from the desolate area are still coming to reinforce us. Qin Yu looked at the black fog, his eyes flashing. Over 30 martial progenitor realm cultivators had shown up at the same time. It was most likely that over 100 martial progenitors had gathered at the ruins. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At that instant, a soft buzz could be heard coming from Chun Jiuxing's body. Chun Jiuxing's expression changed tremendously as he sensed it. With a flick of his right hand, an ancient badge appeared in his hand. Meanwhile, the ancient badge continued to vibrate. "What's wrong?" Qin Yu asked after seeing Chun Jiuxing's pale face. "My sister is in danger. This is her distress badge." Chun Jiuxing stared at the black fog in a panic. He initially thought that his sister would be able to escape from the danger with her capabilities, thus he was planning to search for her. However, the fluctuation from the badge in his hand indicated that his sister was still inside the black fog. "Should we go in and take a look?" Qin Yu pondered. If it were a martial progenitor, Chun Zilian would not have had the time to send out a distress signal. It seemed like she had either stumbled into a savage beast or the Black Ice Martial Emperor clan. If the Black Ice Martial Emperor clan dared to hunt Chun Jiuxing down, in that case, it was not impossible for him to attack Chun Zilian. "Thanks." Chun Jiuxing bowed toward Qin Yu in a serious manner. He had the same thought too, but he had no idea how to tell Qin Yu about it. After all, there were over 10 martial progenitors fighting in the black fog. If they were not careful enough, they might die. Qin Yu brought Chun Jiuxing with him and plunged into the black fog. Along the way, Qin Yu stumbled into many martial god realm beasts, but they did not pose any threat to him. Whenever they stumbled into a savage beast, they would be slain in an instant. Upon seeing this, Chun Jiuxing could not conceal the astonishment in his eyes. Although he already knew that Qin Yu's strength was shocking, he was still shocked. However, he still did not expect for Qin Yu to be able to kill martial gods as easily as killing chickens and ducks. For Qin Yu to do this, it was naturally intentional. Since he knew about the ancient imperial palace, he was planning to carry out the ancient emperor's plan. There was no need for Qin Yu to keep a low profile anymore. He could let the ancient emperor know about his talent and strength through Chun Jiuxing. It would be of great help to him in his quest to become the ancient emperor's son. As long as they entered the ancient emperor's secret ground, Qin Yu's plan would basically succeed. It's just ahead. After slaying over 100 martial god realm beasts and flying a few hundred miles away, Qin Yu and Chun Jiuxing saw Chun Zilian at a certain location filled with black mist. Currently, Chun Zilian was surrounded by a formation set up by over 20 people. She was in a dire situation. As Qin Yu had expected, the people attacking Chun Zilian were the same. They were the people of the Black Ice Martial Mansion led by Li Tianxian. Whoosh! Chun Jiuxing was excited and was about to charge out when Qin Yu waved his hand, causing a three-colored glow to flash. The three-colored universe ring appeared and sucked Chun Jiuxing into it. As for Qin Yu, he used the earth tunneling technique to quietly approach them. Although Qin Yu was not afraid of the two top martial mansions, he was not afraid of them. Before obtaining the Golden Flame Heaven Incinerating Dragon, Qin Yu did not want to cause any trouble. Therefore, he could not let Li Tianxian and the others go. Senior Sister Zilian, you should know that this barrier will not be able to protect you for long. You'd better surrender. Li Tianxian attacked with all his might as he spoke to break down Chun Zilian's will. Humph. Do you think that you can become the ancient emperor's son after killing me? Dream on. Chun Zilian's eyes were cold. She knew what Li Tianxian wanted from her. Judging from the disciples of the ancient imperial palace, he was the most likely to become the ancient emperor's son. She had the innate sacred body, Qin Yu had the divine body, and Zhou Yunlang had the innate sword body. After Li Tianxian got rid of her, the next people he would deal with would be Qin Yu and Zhou Yunlang. Dream on? Ha ha! I'm not afraid to tell you that not only do I want to become the ancient emperor's son, but I also want to become the ancient emperor. Your bloodline has been sitting on the throne for long enough. It's time for a new master. Li Tianquan's eyes were burning. It was as if he could already see the scene of him becoming the ancient emperor. Even if the ancient emperor changes hands, that person will never be you, Chen Zilian said coldly. Hmm? Do you know any inside information? Li Tianxian was stunned as he looked at Chen Zilian. Chen Zilian was the descendant of the current ancient emperor. She could be said to be the closest person to the ancient emperor. Chen Zilian and Chen Jiuxing were the most likely to know what the ancient emperor was thinking. Chen Zilian smiled disdainfully. She did not slip her hand. Since you don't know what's good for you, then blame me for being ruthless. Li Tianxian snorted coldly. He secretly ordered to capture Chen Zilian's soul. He wanted to know if the ancient emperor had already decided on a candidate for the ancient emperor's son. At this thought, the figures of Qin Yu and Zhou Yunlang appeared in Li Tianquan's mind. Shen Feng, Zhou Yunlang of. Li Tianquan's eyes flashed with killing intent. Once Chen Zilian and her brother were dead, it would be Qin Yu and Zhou Yunlang's turn. Especially Qin Yu. He had to die. Poof, 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 poof. At this moment, beams of light shot up into the sky from the ground. The beams of light were like sharp swords. They easily pierced through the disciples of the Black Ice Martial Mansion. Blood splattered everywhere as they died on the spot. Chapter 252. Who's there? The sudden change of events caused Li Tianxian and the others to be alarmed. A formation? Chen Zilian scanned her surroundings. Judging from the target of the light pillars, it was obvious that they were targeting the people of the Black Ice Martial Mansion. Seal! A deep roar could be heard from underground. The next moment, the light pillars transformed into a mysterious ancient formation. Within the ancient formation, spiritual runes gathered and formed a giant ancient dragon. The ancient dragon roared and enveloped Li Tianxian and the rest of the people of the Black Ice Martial Mansion. Puff, puff, puff. When the ancient dragon dissipated, Li Tianxian and the others turned into ashes and disappeared from the heavens and earth. What a powerful killing formation! Chen Zilian's face was filled with astonishment. Li Tianxian and the others were peak martial gods. If they joined forces, they could even fight against her at her peak. Now, they had turned into ashes in an instant under the killing formation. Who could have set up such a killing formation without them noticing? Whoosh! The killing formation dissipated and Qin Yu's figure emerged from the ground. Junior brother, Shen Feng. Chen Zilian was even more shocked when she saw Qin Yu. Was the person who helped just now Qin Yu? Qin Yu possessed such astonishing talent and attainments in the array Dao. Injured your foundation? Qin Yu walked over. With a glance, he knew that Chen Zilian's condition was more serious than Chen Jiuxing's. It's just a minor injury. Thank you, junior brother, for saving me. Chen Zilian collected her thoughts and dissipated the barrier around her. She then bowed at Qin Yu to express her gratitude. Qin Yu's reaction, without a doubt, meant that it was him who had secretly helped them earlier. Whoosh! Qin Yu flicked his finger and a tricolored glow flickered. Chen Jiuxing then appeared from the tricolored universe ring. They are really from the Black Ice Martial Mansion. After confirming Chen Zilian's condition, Chen Jiuxing's face turned dark and murderous. The Black Ice Martial Royal Mansion actually wanted to eliminate both of them. It was obvious at a glance what kind of wild ambition he had. We'll talk about the Black Ice Martial Royal Palace later. More martial progenitors have gathered here. Thus, it's unwise to stay here any longer. Let's leave at once. Chen Zilian swallowed several precious pills in succession, temporarily suppressing her injuries. She glanced at the center of the black fog and hurriedly said, "You've cultivated eye techniques?" Qin Yu noticed a flash of white light in Chen Zilian's eyes and couldn't help but ask, "Yes." Chen Zilian nodded slightly. This was her unique secret technique. What's the situation inside? Qin Yu did not care what eye technique Chen Zilian cultivated. However, he was quite curious about the ancient ruins that had attracted so many martial progenitors. Junior brother Shen Feng, you couldn't possibly be thinking of entering the central region, right? Hearing this, Chen Jiuxing's expression changed slightly. From Qin Yu's somewhat eager expression, it was clear that he was interested in the central region. Junior brother Shinfeng, this region has already become a battlefield for martial progenitors. Even though your strength is outstanding, it's better if you don't get involved in the battle. Chun Zilian was startled too, as she tried to persuade him. It's fine. I'm only looking around. I won't get involved. Qin Yu let out a smile. If the martial progenitors were not competing for the martial monarch spirits, Qin Yu was too lazy to interfere, as he did not want to expose his trump card. However, if they were competing for the martial monarch spirits, there was no way Qin Yu would let them go. I have no idea what exactly happened in there. I could only vaguely see a martial progenitor of the desolated land competing with an elder of our ancient imperial palace for a corpse. Chun Zilian knew that it was useless to persuade Qin Yu after hearing his words. Thus she had no choice but to explain. A corpse? Qin Yu was startled. An ordinary corpse would not attract so many martial progenitors to fight against one another, unless the body of a martial monarch. The dragon spirit was startled too. The body of a martial monarch was none other than the body of a martial monarch. The corpse of a martial monarch was considered a priceless treasure. Leaving everything else aside, if a perfectly preserved body of a martial monarch was refined into a puppet, it was highly possible to obtain a martial monarch realm puppet. If it's really the body of a martial monarch, it could be used as a skeleton for the demonic puppets. The dragon spirit said excitedly. Qin Yu had been collecting the corpses of the martial progenitors he had slain during this period of time. It went without saying that he was planning to refine a powerful skeleton for the skeleton Phantom King. The skeleton Phantom King was a puppet, thus its strength was determined by the strength of its skeleton. However, no matter how many martial progenitor corpses were refined, they were still incomparable to those of the martial monarch realm. Once the skeleton Phantom King thoroughly merged with the body of a martial monarch. In that case, Qin Yu would be able to obtain a puppet with extraordinary battle power. Qin Yu was intrigued too. Although it was not a martial monarch spirit, he would not let go of the chance to refine the body of a martial monarch realm. The people of the Black Ice Martial Emperor's mansion should be dead by now. You should leave first. Qin Yu took out a few ancient formations and handed them to Chun Jiuxing and Chun Zilian before his figure sprang toward the center of the black mist. Could it be that his strength is comparable to the martial progenitor realm? Chun Jiuxing's eyes flickered with admiration as he watched Qin Yu disappear into the blink of an eye. He had always prided himself as a genius and did not think he was weaker than his peers. However, after witnessing Qin Yu's talent and strength, he could not help but be impressed. He had no right to be proud of himself in front of Qin Yu. A genius with a godflesh's talent is indeed extraordinary. No wonder grandfather is so interested in him. Chun Zilian's eyes flickered with astonishment too. Rumble, as Chun Jiuxing and Chun Zilian flew a few hundred li away. The entire barbarian god's ancient ruins began to tremble vigorously. Countless enormous cracks were present on the ground, with the black fog region as the center. The cracks spread in all directions like a giant spiderweb. Following a loud explosion, the ground began to crumble. The black mist covering the center of the ancient ruins began to gather in a certain direction before disappearing. What happened? Chun Jiuxing and Chun Zilian were shocked and immediately flew into the sky. They looked at the huge crater on the ground and sucked in a breath of cold air. Although martial progenitors were able to comprehend the rules of the heavens and earth, it was impossible for them to create a 10,000 li wide pit. What kind of force was responsible for this? In the midst of their astonishment, they raised their heads and looked into the distance. As the black mist began to gather, the center of the ancient ruins was clearly revealed. More than 100 rules of the heavens and earth were clashing at the center of the ancient ruins. The entire sky continued to distort, showing signs of collapsing. In that chaotic area, there were several figures standing in the air. Each of them possessed a shocking aura, indicating that they were all martial progenitors. Some of them were savage beasts, while others were human cultivators. However, The two martial progenitors that were originally fighting each other had come to a stop. Their gazes were fixed at the center of the ancient ruins. Over there was a skeleton that emitted a silver light, quietly floating in the air. The aura of the barbarian tribe that they had sensed growing stronger was being emitted from the silver skeleton. Chapter 253. It's indeed the body of a martial monarch. In the void, Qin Yu, who had already changed his appearance, looked at the silver skeleton with a strange light flickering in his eyes. Judging from the tyrannical pressure, the silver skeleton had been preserved very well. In fact, it was way too well preserved. Has it developed intelligence because it has been nourished by the qi of the dragon vein? The dragon spirit in the ancient dragon seal was aware of the anomaly too. The silver skeleton was no longer as simple as a martial monarch skeleton. From the silver skeleton, they could clearly sense the fluctuation of intelligence. In other words, the martial monarch skeleton was no longer an inanimate object, but something with intelligence. If they were not mistaken, the attack that had caused the area within 10,000 li to collapse, it was most likely the doing of the silver skeleton. The body of a martial monarch has developed intelligence. This is going to be troublesome. The martial progenitor realm elders of the ancient imperial palace gathered together. They stared at the silver skeleton with solemn expressions on their faces. The silver skeleton had suddenly unleashed its attack. However, it had killed over 10 low-ranked martial progenitors and severely injured 8 high-ranked martial progenitors. Such a terrifying force was enough to crush the martial progenitors at the scene. Could it be that the god of barbarians is still alive? In the desolated area, the transformed martial progenitor realm beasts were extremely terrified as they continued to whisper to one another. The god of barbarians had always been the most honorable existence in the desolate area. Now that the skeleton of the god of barbarians had developed intelligence, they had no idea what to do. Crack! Amidst the deathly silence, everyone's gazes landed on the silver skeleton. A clear sound of bones cracking could be heard. The silver skeleton, which had been quietly floating in the air, actually stepped into the air. The eyes of the skeleton emitted a brilliant silver glow, which scanned the martial progenitors at the scene. Everyone could feel chills running down their spines, as if they were being targeted by something ominous. Have you already refined the dragon vein? The silver skeleton scanned the martial progenitors before its eyes emitted a silver glow onto Qin Yu's figure. It sensed the remnant dragon bloodline aura on Qin Yu's body. Qin Yu felt the space around him tighten as a vast pressure descended upon him, making him feel as though he was being imprisoned. The words of the silver skeleton caused the martial progenitors present to all look at Qin Yu. However, after taking a glance, astonishment emerged in their eyes. They couldn't see through Qin Yu's cultivation. Could it be that Qin Yu's cultivation had surpassed the advanced martial progenitor realm and reached the peak martial progenitor realm? Since you woke me up and destroyed my dragon vein, you can use your lives to make up for it. A mysterious silver light burst forth from the silver skeleton. The silver light pierced through the void and fused into the pillar of light. In the next moment, the pillar of light that soared into the sky disappeared. Above the 9 heavens, a silver sun appeared. However, if one were to take a closer look, they would be able to discover that so-called silver sun was actually the ancient bronze mirror that was emitting a dazzling silver light. The silver light scattered in the air and formed silver talismans that connected with one another before spreading rapidly. In the blink of an eye, the talismans had spread across the entire space. Oh no, this relic space has been sealed. The martial progenitors were astounded as they collected their thoughts. As the space was sealed, the ancient ruins had turned into a cage that no one could escape from. That ancient bronze mirror is indeed a god weapon. The dragon spirit raised its head and glanced at the ancient bronze mirror. A sacred weapon that was able to seal off the entire space was not that powerful. You want to completely refine everyone here? Qin Yu carefully sensed the power of the silver talismans and understood the silver skeleton's intention. Crack! While Qin Yu was observing, the silver skeleton began to make its move. Its skeletal fingers nimbly formed a series of profound seals. The silver talismans in the air immediately emitted a scorching glow. The heat was like an ordinary person standing beside a volcano, unable to stop the heat from entering their body. Blood and chi are being burned. The martial progenitors who were still on alert soon collected their thoughts, causing them to be astounded. It did not matter if it was an ordinary person or a martial progenitor. Blood and chi were the foundation of one's flesh. Although the stronger one's cultivation was, the stronger one's blood and chi would be, they would not be able to withstand the heat. No, it's not being burned, but being absorbed by the talismans. The astounded martial progenitors immediately made their moves, trying to destroy the silver talismans in the air. However, the silver talismans were like the moon in the water. They only shuddered slightly despite the force of the laws of the heavens and earth. Qin Yu glanced at the ancient bronze mirror before his gaze landed on the silver skeleton. At that instant, the silver skeleton was emitting a mysterious silver glow. It was like the stars in the night sky, brilliant and beautiful. Qin Yu could tell that the burning blood and chi on their bodies were being absorbed by the golden skeleton. As a result, the aura of the golden skeleton continued to grow stronger. In addition to them, the blood and chi of the living beings in the ancient ruins were being burned too. Do it, destroy it. Qin Yu was not the only one who had noticed this. The martial progenitors of the ancient imperial palace changed their target. Boundless laws of heaven and earth transformed into attacks that blotted out the sky and blasted towards the silver skeleton. Bang! The silver skeleton did not dodge the attacks. It threw a punch forward. Ancient silver runes circled its fist, forming a giant silver fist the size of a mountain. The laws of the heavens and earth of the ancient imperial palace were suppressed. Over 10 white-robed martial progenitors were sent flying while vomiting blood. In just a single move, the difference in strength between the two sides was obvious. The martial progenitors of the ancient imperial martial realm wore dark expressions upon seeing this. It's growing stronger? Is it absorbing our blood and chi to recover its strength? Let's attack together. The martial progenitor realm savage beasts in the desolate area were astounded too. At that instant, they put aside their grudges against the humans and attacked the silver skeleton together. If the silver skeleton was only absorbing the blood and chi of the humans, they would not interfere. However, the silver skeleton was absorbing their blood and chi, thus they could not just stand by and watch. Considering the strength of the silver skeleton, if they did not join forces, they would most likely die here. Rumble. Immediately, an earth-shaking battle that was several times more powerful than before began in this ancient ruin. Countless laws of the heavens and earth exploded, causing the sky to rumble and the ground to crack open. The 10,000-li pit turned into a 10,000-li deep pit in just a few breaths' time. The entire place had turned into a battlefield of destruction. Those below the martial progenitor realm would die instantly if they were caught in it. The silver skeleton was indeed a martial monarch realm expert when it was alive. Although its strength was only at the martial progenitor realm, it was not at a disadvantage when facing over 100 martial progenitors. The silver skeleton was fearless in the battle due to the strength of its martial monarch realm flesh. Chapter 254. Apart from the power of the martial monarch flesh, the silver skeleton was able to absorb the blood of living beings with the help of the silver talismans. As such, its strength grew as the battle progressed. It could even slay 1 or 2 martial progenitors when it was being surrounded, even though the souls of the martial progenitors managed to escape. However, their blood was completely devoured, turning them into dried corpses. Each time it devoured the blood of a martial progenitor, the aura of the silver skeleton would grow stronger. As the battle progressed, the silver skeleton gradually gained the upper hand. Qin Yu swiftly backed away to avoid being involved in the battle. The silver skeleton possessed the strength of a ninth-layer martial progenitor. Even if Qin Yu were to use all his trump cards, it would be difficult for him to defeat it. Therefore, he had to make some preparations. Luckily, the martial progenitors of the ancient imperial martial realm and the desolated land were keeping the silver skeleton busy. This gave Qin Yu sufficient time to prepare. He had to obtain the martial monarch flesh at all costs. Once he obtained the martial monarch flesh, he would then subdue the golden flame heaven-incinerating dragon of the ancient imperial palace. That would be the end of the 10,000 ghost palace. As a martial monarch of the dragon god, how could he hide like a rat on the street? Noiselessly, Qin Yu entered the enormous crater that was several tens of thousands of miles large. He began to set up the killing array. The power of the blood absorbed by the silver talismans did not have much effect on Qin Yu. Not to mention that he had already mastered the divine dragon body. It was just that he didn't cultivate the dragon god tyrannical body and relied on the fire lightning dragon body at the perfect stage. Qin Yu's blood was strong, thus he was not afraid of being absorbed by the silver talismans for the time being. Bang, bang, bang. The battle continued in the ancient ruins of the god of barbarians. More martial progenitors of the human race and the desolated land were dying. As a result, the silver skeleton grew stronger. The silver talismans covering its body were showing signs of turning into a faint blood color. While the battle was taking place deep inside the desolated ancient ruins, the cultivators and the desolated beasts that had entered the desolated ancient ruins, and even the living beings in the ancient ruins, they were all gathering towards the core of the ancient ruins. There was no other reason. The further they were from the core area, the faster the silver talismans absorbed the chi and blood energy. Along the way, countless savage beast cultivators had already turned into dried corpses. Damn it! But the martial artists who were rushing over from all directions, when they saw the core area of the great battle, their faces were filled with despair. In such a situation, advancing or retreating was a dead end. Pung pung pung. In that chaotic battle, another 3 martial progenitors were killed and blood splattered everywhere. With a flash of silver light, all the chi and blood were devoured. It was the silver skeleton. In less than a quarter of an hour, the silver talisman on the silver skeleton's body, which was originally light red, had gradually turned a deep red color. Almost a quarter of the original 100 martial emperors had fallen. The alliance between the human race and the savage beasts also showed signs of loosening. The strength of the silver skeleton rose from the 9th layer martial progenitor realm to the 4th layer, 9th layer martial progenitor realm. At this rate, once it devoured all the chi and blood of the martial progenitors, its cultivation would most likely reach the martial monarch realm. It's done. It's about time to make my move. Qin Yu, who had set up tens of thousands of formation flags, raised his head and looked at the silver skeleton. His eyes were burning with passion. Bang! Just as Qin Yu formed hand seals and was about to activate the formation flags to set up the killing formation, an earth-shattering explosion rang out, and a huge hole was blasted open in the sky. Billowing demonic mist spread out from the huge hole. Demonic chi? Qin Yu's movements paused. He felt a sense of familiarity with the devil mist that had appeared. God-burying ridge. The dragon's soul recalled. The demonic mist was the same as the demonic chi fluctuation in the ruins at God-burying ridge. This aura, the demon's sovereign. The golden skeleton muttered softly in astonishment when it saw the demonic mist. As the demonic mist dissipated, a figure was revealed. It was the demon's sovereign with pitch-black eyes and demonic runes all over his body. Barbarian god, long time no see. The demon sovereign stepped forward. Billowing demonic chi and a vast demonic aura swept out. More than half of the sky was covered by the demonic mist. At this moment, the martial ancestors of the ancient imperial martial world and the wildlands quickly retreated. The barbarian god that appeared gave them a sense of danger that was even greater than the silver skeleton. I didn't expect that after stripping your soul and setting up the 9 demon refining arrays, you still wouldn't be destroyed. The silver skeleton spoke. He wasn't a sentient being born with a martial emperor's body, but the barbarian god of the wildlands. In the battle back then, he had sealed the demon sovereign, but he had also been hit by the demon race's forbidden curse. He had no choice but to use the power of the dragon vein to seal himself here. Several hundred years had passed, and his emperor's soul had collapsed. Only a wisp of his soul had survived. Fortunately, although his flesh and blood had dissipated, he still left behind this skeleton. Over the past few hundred years, he had recovered a lot of his strength with the help of the saint-grade dragon vein energy. Hand over my soul and immortal treasure, and I can give you a chance to enter the cycle of reincarnation. The demon sovereign's pitch-black eyes looked at the barbarian god indifferently. His tone was extremely calm. Haha, based on your tone, it sounds like you won't need to expend much effort to destroy me. A sinister smile appeared on the barbarian god's skeletal face. Back then, you sneak-attacked me while I was in closed-door cultivation. Only then did you manage to seal me. Now, you're just a wisp of your soul. Yet, you still dare to act mysterious before me. The demon sovereign did not waste any more words. He stomped down, and space trembled. How is this possible? With your soul sealed, how could your cultivation recover so quickly? The sinister smile on the barbarian god's skeletal face froze in disbelief. Half-step martial emperor. The eyes of Chinyu, who had returned underground, flashed. The demon venerate was at least 10 times stronger than the silver skeleton. If it was a half-step martial emperor, given this demon sovereign's former cultivation, he probably could already use the Great Tao's power. Not only is he a half-step martial emperor, but he also comprehended the Space Tao. The Dragon Soul with the Space Tao's origin magic ability could sense it even more clearly. Among the tens of thousands of Great Taos, the Space Tao was definitely one of the strongest. When fighting someone of the same cultivation level, there were very few who could match him. Don't! It sounded like an ancient war drum being beaten. All the living beings who heard this sound felt like their souls had suffered a heavy blow. Many of them even bled from their 7 orifices and fell from the sky. Ka, the barbarian god, who took the attack head-on, was severely injured. The blood-red talisman scripts on his body cracked inch by inch. The barbarian god roared furiously. The blood-red talisman scripts on his body flickered, and a silver divine light flowed in his bones. His skeletal body, which was originally as tall as a person, grew to 15 meters tall at this moment. The barbarian god's aura also soared, infinitely close to that of a half-step martial emperor. You overestimate yourself, the demon sovereign said disdainfully as he thrust out both hands. Spatial whirlpools appeared around the barbarian god, capable of swallowing and tearing everything apart. Kacha! Kacha! The spatial power wreaked havoc, and the barbarian god grew to 15 meters tall. This time, even the silver skeleton on the barbarian god's body cracked continuously, covering it in cracks. It looked like the barbarian god's body would disintegrate at any moment. Chapter 255. He is indeed able to control the Tao of heaven and earth. At the bottom of the deep crater, Qin Yu, who was using his secret technique, sensed those spatial vortexes. His heart grew slightly cold. If he was a martial ancestor, even if he was only at the peak of the 9th Revolution martial ancestor realm, with this ancient slaughtering array, there was nothing for Qin Yu to be afraid of. However, if he was a half-step martial emperor who could control the Tao of heaven and earth, the situation was completely different. Although Qin Yu had many tricks up his sleeve, he could not defeat the demon sovereign. Luckily, the demon saint seal on Qin Yu's body had been sealed by his first senior brother with a secret technique. Otherwise, his identity would have been exposed. Damn it! The barbarian god, whose bones were cracking, roared furiously. Silver divine light surged like a river, trying to resist the spatial whirlpools. Unfortunately, the powerful silver divine light was torn apart by the power of space. It was instantly torn apart and devoured. Although the barbarian god's situation was alleviated, he was not free. Divine origin mirror. Taking advantage of this moment, the barbarian god formed a seal with his hands. The ancient bronze mirror, which looked like a scorching sun in the sky, immediately turned into a ray of light and fell. Immediately, the silver talismans covering the barbarian gods remained shrank as the ancient mirror fell. In the end, they gathered in an area of a few hundred feet. This area just happened to cover the barbarian god and the demon sovereign. As the silver talismans gathered, the vast power of chi and blood merged into the barbarian god's body. Instantly, the countless cracks on the barbarian god's body healed rapidly. The flowing silver divine light also gradually transformed. Countless mysterious ancient talismans could be vaguely seen floating in the divine light, gradually resisting the spatial whirlpools. The cultivators and beasts that were originally heading toward the core area of the remains, seeing the silver talismans absorbing the chi and blood disappear, they immediately fled toward the hole in the sky. If they did not take this opportunity to escape, when the barbarian god and the demon sovereign finished fighting, they would not be able to escape death. Even the martial progenitors fled for their lives. Of course, not all of them fled. Many powerful martial progenitors backed off and hid in the distance to observe the outcome of the battle. A martial emperor skeleton and a divine weapon. Such temptation was enough to make them take the risk out of desperation. Never would I have imagined that the divine origin mirror would be refined by you. However, even though the divine origin mirror is a divine artifact, with your current cultivation, how much of its might can you unleash? The honorable demon lifted his head and cast a glance at the ancient bronze mirror that was shining with ancient runes. He clasped two of his fingers together and pointed at the god of berserkers. The power of his finger tore through the air, shattering the void and causing divine light to scatter in all directions. A finger hole immediately appeared on the barbarian god's body. There was also a mysterious and bizarre devil curse spreading out from the spot where the finger had struck. It was continuously corroding the god of berserkers' bones. Ancient barbarian strength. Barbarian god shouted. An ancient presence descended from the ancient bronze mirror and gathered on the god of berserkers. The barbarian god's aura immediately increased by dozens of times. Boom! Then, the barbarian god's 4 to 5 feet tall body took a step forward and arrived in front of the demon sovereign. Silver runes flickered on his huge fist as he punched out with a destructive force. The void was like an ocean, creating waves of air that were tens of thousands of feet high, sweeping through the world and covering the demonic lord. Crack! The demonic lord didn't dodge at all and wave his hand. The demonic mist carried a monstrous demonic aura as it rolled, and turned into a ferocious black ancient beast that was hundreds of feet tall. The ancient beast opened its bloody mouth and swallowed the barbarian god's destructive fist. The power of space appeared, causing the destructive fist to shatter inch by inch and disappear into the ancient beast's mouth. Whoosh! At the same time, a demonic staff appeared in the demonic lord's hand. There were countless mysterious devil curses carved on the staff. The staff pierced through the air, and the devil curses glowed. The barbarian god was sent flying hundreds of feet away, unable to resist at all. The demonic chi staff was also a powerful divine artifact. The demonic lord took advantage of the opportunity to attack, not giving the barbarian god a chance to react. The staff shadows that filled the sky were like billions of meteors falling from the sky and instantly bombarding the barbarian god's body. The cracks that had originally healed on the barbarian god's bones appeared once again. This time, it was even more tragic. Many of the bones were shattered and turned into countless silver lights that scattered in the void. If you kill me, you'll never know where your soul is or where your immortal treasure is. The barbarian god, who was struggling to resist, sensed that his injuries were getting more and more serious. This ruin of yours is only so big. If I kill you, I'll have my own way of finding it. The demonic lord was unmoved. Instead, his attacks became even more ferocious. He was like a bloodthirsty, demonic beast that wanted to devour the barbarian god. Disperse. After being hit continuously, the barbarian god's right arm was broken and his remnant soul became weaker. The barbarian god let out an unwilling roar as all the silver patterns on his body shone with silver light. The next moment, his entire body disintegrated and turned into countless silver lights that shot in all directions. Do you think you can still run away at this time? The demonic lord sneered as if he was not surprised by the barbarian god's disintegration. The demonic lord did not seem to do anything, but the demonic mist that covered half of the sky immediately swept away. All the silver lights that escaped were entangled by the demonic mist and were sealed in the void. Back then, the demonic lord was plotted against by the barbarian god and was sealed for hundreds of years. During this time, how could the demonic lord not think about how to deal with the barbarian god's methods? Hand over my own soul and immortal treasure. The demonic lord's figure flashed and flew in front of one of the silver lights. After the demonic chi swept over, a wisp of soul power was restrained from the silver light. The other silver lights immediately dimmed and turned into pieces of white bones. Like rain, they fell from the void with a pitter-patter. This is a good opportunity. When the dragon's soul saw those white bones, its eyes flashed with excitement. The demonic lord did not seem to be interested in the barbarian god's remains. So Chin-Yu could naturally enjoy the fruits of his labor. Something's not right. Chin-Yu looked at the bones that had fallen from the sky. His gaze then turned to the ancient bronze mirror in the sky. The divine light surrounding the ancient bronze mirror had also dimmed. However, it did not lose much of its spirituality. Once a divine artifact was refined and its owner died, the spirituality of the divine artifact would also be greatly affected. Whoosh! At this moment, the demonic lord was rather excited after refining the soul. However, he did not care about the abnormality of the ancient bronze mirror. He clenched his hands in the air and then pulled with both hands. The void was torn apart like a piece of cloth. A dazzling immortal light appeared from the crack in the void. Sensing the fluctuations of the dazzling immortal light, Chin-Yu's expression suddenly changed. This fluctuation seems to be the dragon's soul also sensed it instantly and was stunned. The ancient immortal token. Countless thoughts flashed through Chin-Yu's mind. Although the fluctuations emitted by the dazzling immortal light were vast and unfathomable. However, Chin-Yu and the dragon's soul instantly sensed it. The fluctuations emitted by the dazzling immortal light were exactly the same as the ancient immortal token he had obtained before. The ancient immortal token was rumored to be the treasure of the ghost Emperor Zhentian. However, Chin-Yu had never been able to figure out what kind of secret it was hiding. At the very least, when he was at the peak of his previous life, there were no rumors of the ancient immortal token. In other words, the ancient immortal token appeared after he died. Otherwise, he would have at least heard of it. Chapter 256. Chin-Yu did not expect that there would be an ancient immortal token in the barbarian god's ruins. The power of the ancient immortal token in the spatial crack far surpassed that of the ancient immortal token he had obtained. However, the power of the immortal light was extremely strange. It was not a power that Chin-Yu had seen in the past. Could it be that the ancient immortal token was not an item from the heaven region? Swoosh! The demon Honorable could not hide his excitement. He quickly reached out and took out two items from the spatial crack. One was a fist-sized pitch-black statue. Demonic chi could be vaguely seen. However, there was a powerful seal on it. The pitch-black statue contained the soul of the demon Honorable. Although the barbarian god had successfully separated the yin and yang souls of the demon Honorable, he could not completely erase them. Therefore, he could only seal the demon Honorable in the god-burying ridge and seal his soul in the statue. The second item was an ancient token. The ancient token seemed to be made of bronze. There were ancient spiritual runes carved on it. It was extremely profound. It was exactly the same as the ancient immortal token that Qin Yu had obtained. The only difference was the ancient immortal token in the demon Honorable's hand. All of the spirit inscriptions lit up and rays of mysterious immortal light spread out. Crack! The demon Honorable clenched his fist, and the pitch-black statue shattered. A terrifying soul appeared from the pitch-black statue and merged into the demon Honorable's body. In an instant, the demon Honorable, who was originally at the half-step martial emperor realm, advanced to the martial emperor realm. A supreme demonic aura spread out from the demon Honorable's body. All the living beings in the barbarian god's ruins felt fear in their hearts. They wanted to bow down and worship him. Martial emperor realm. In the distant void, the greed in the hearts of the martial ancestors who wanted to take advantage of the situation disappeared completely. Roar! Just as the demon Honorable's cultivation reached the martial emperor realm, he grabbed the divine origin mirror and was about to leave. A dragon's roar that shook the heavens suddenly resounded. Almost instantly, a beam of light fell from the sky like a Shinron. Another huge hole appeared in the sky above the barbarian god's ruins. This time, with the hole as the center, the entire sky cracked. It was as if it would collapse at any time. The boundary essence has been broken. The demon Venerable tilted his head to take a look, and his pupils shrank to the size of needles. That beam of light hadn't come from the desolate lands to the barbarian god's ruins. Instead, they had directly descended from the ancient imperial martial world from the nine heavens. Outside the seven great martial realms, there was a powerful realm essence. The boundary essence was like an innate barrier that protected the martial world. The boundary essence of the martial world could not be seen normally. Martial artists would not be obstructed when traveling through the seven great martial worlds. However, if there was a powerful external force that threatened the entire martial world, the power of the world origin would appear. But now, that beam of light had clearly pierced through the ancient imperial martial world's boundary and blasted into the barbarian god's relic. He had broken through the barrier and come here. Even a martial emperor would not be able to do such a thing. What was the origin of that beam of light? At this moment, the seven great martial realms were completely silent. Countless experts were on the move. The reason for that was because the oppressive might emitted by that beam of light was simply too astonishing. Even if they were separated by several martial realms, they could still clearly sense it. This fluctuation at this moment in a barren mountain in the ancient imperial martial world. Lin Chongqing, who was sitting cross-legged in seclusion, suddenly opened his eyes. There was an intense shock in his eyes. He is in the barbarian god's relic. Qin Yu was preparing to seal the barbarian god's remains after the demon sovereign left. When he saw the beam of light descending from the sky, his entire body froze in the deep pit. In Qin Yu's heart, killing intent erupted like a volcano, sweeping and erupting. He could not suppress it at all. Qin Yu could not be more familiar with the fluctuation of dragon power that the beam of light exuded. Could it really be him? In the ancient dragon god seal, the eyes of the dragon soul were also filled with intense shock and killing intent. In the heaven domain, there was only one person that Qin Yu and the dragon soul wanted to kill the most in the heaven domain. The emperor of the berserk dragon, Xing Luo. In his previous life, Qin Yu cultivated the immemorial fighting dragon art and refined the dragon race of the myriad worlds, obtaining thousands of dragon races' supernatural powers. Known as the Dragon God Emperor, his battle strength was unparalleled. Xing Luo obtained the 9 Revolutions Berserk Dragon art and devoured the blood of the ancient Berserk Dragon. Using his own body as a vessel, he continued to transform. In the end, he evolved into an ancient Berserk Dragon, thus obtaining the name of the Berserk Dragon Emperor. Therefore, even if they did not see the real person. However, the dragon power emitted from that beam of light. Qin Yu and the dragon soul could be sure that it was definitely the ancient berserk dragon fluctuations that Xing Luo had fused with. Who? After a moment, Qin Yu immediately reacted, took a deep breath, and suppressed the killing intent in his heart. With his current cultivation, if he were to meet Xing Luo, he was afraid that he would not even have the chance to enter the cycle of reincarnation. A peak emperor's battle strength could destroy the 7 great martial worlds with a flick of his finger. After calming down, Qin Yu also had doubts in his heart. According to his senior brother, Xing Luo had disappeared from the heaven domain ever since the battle of the immortal god graveyard. Then why would Xing Luo come to the 7 great martial worlds at the edge of the heaven domain? Could it be that he had discovered that he had reincarnated? No, the fluctuation emitted by that beam of light did not lock onto him at all. If it had really discovered him, Xing Luo would have definitely sealed him completely at the first moment. Could it be that he's here for the ancient immortal token? Suddenly, a thought appeared in Qin Yu's mind, and he looked at the mysterious ancient immortal token in the demon sovereign's hand. Apart from that, Qin Yu could not think of any other reason that would make Xing Luo come to the barbaric ruins. As the dragon roar dissipated, the beam of light also gradually dissipated. A tall and straight figure appeared in the void. It was a tall, slender, and handsome man dressed in blue. Seeing the blue-robed man, Qin Yu and the dragon soul retracted their auras even more thoroughly. That was because that person was Xing Luo, Berserk, Dragon Emperor? The demon sovereign seemed to recognize Xing Luo, and he was stunned when he saw Xing Luo clearly. When the demon sovereign was at his peak, he had also traveled to the 3 great imperial realms and the heaven domain. Although he had never met the Berserk Dragon Emperor, Xing Luo, he had heard countless rumors. Ever since the Dragon God Emperor had fallen 1,000 years ago, the Berserk Dragon Emperor was known as the strongest emperor in the heaven domain. Although he had not heard any news about the Berserk Dragon Emperor in the past 1,000 years, he had risen during the Berserk Dragon Emperor's reign. When the Berserk Dragon Emperor had risen, he had killed emperors, slaughtered demon gods, annihilated the evil races, and fought in the extraterritorial battlefield. His battle strength was so strong that only the Dragon God Emperor of the past could suppress him. Now that the legendary Berserk Dragon Emperor had appeared in front of him, the demon sovereign was naturally shocked and could not believe it. Ancient immortal token. After Xing Luo appeared, his gaze fell on the ancient immortal token in the demon sovereign's hand, and he stretched out his right hand. Not good. The demon sovereign's hair stood on end, and a feeling of absolute death appeared in his heart. Without thinking, the demon sovereign immediately used a forbidden technique of the space Dao to escape into the chaotic space. Boom! However, just as the demon sovereign moved, his body suddenly exploded. Demonic chi filled the air, and his flesh and blood splattered everywhere. A martial emperor had been killed in an instant. In the void far away, the martial ancestors who saw this scene all sucked in a breath of cold air. A bone-chilling cold pervaded his entire body. A martial emperor was killed in one move. What kind of existence was this person? Chapter 257. After killing the demon sovereign, Xing Luo's expression didn't change at all. To him, killing a martial monarch was no different than killing an ant. Holding the ancient immortal token in his hand, Xing Luo looked at the crater below him. With Star Luo's cultivation, he naturally discovered Qin Yu, who had escaped underground. Qin Yu felt his body sink. He felt as if he was being watched by an ancient beast. However, Qin Yu didn't react at all. Although Xing Luo was looking at the crater, he wasn't looking at him. Xing Luo was most likely interested in the ancient killing formation he had set up. After looking at it for a while, Xing Luo withdrew his gaze and took a step forward. His draconic aura surged as he transformed into a giant Shinran and soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a beam of light and disappeared into the void. Although he was curious, at Xing Luo's level, he didn't care. An ancient killing formation that could only deal with martial ancestors was nothing to him. However, if Xing Luo found out that Qin Yu was an ant that he had disregarded, he would be furious. He had to put in a lot of effort to ally with powerful enemies before he dared to attack the Dragon God Sovereign. What kind of expression would Xing Luo have? He's finally gone. When Xing Luo's aura completely disappeared from the ancient imperial martial world, the dragon's soul heaved a sigh of relief. In that instant, the dragon's soul had clearly sensed the feeling of death that had penetrated deep into its bones. If Xing Luo had made a move, he and Qin Yu would have been reduced to ashes in an instant. It's good that you're still alive. Qin Yu came out of the crater and looked in the direction Xing Luo had left with a smile on his face. He wasn't talking to himself. Instead, he was talking to Xing Luo. He had heard from his first senior brother that Xing Luo hadn't appeared since the battle in the graveyard of the immortal gods. Qin Yu was worried that something had happened to Xing Luo. Now that he saw Xing Luo safe and sound, he was relieved. As long as Xing Luo was still alive, he could take revenge with his own hands. Xing Luo had betrayed him and led him into a dead end. He had almost died. If he couldn't take revenge with his own hands, Qin Yu would have a knot in his heart for the rest of his life. Whoosh, whoosh. Meanwhile, the martial progenitors who were planning to flee. As soon as he saw Xing Luo leave, he immediately flew over from afar. Aside from the ancient immortal badge, Xing Luo didn't even spare a glance at the demon paragon's staff, divine origin mirror, or the god of berserkers' bones scattered all over the ground. While Xing Luo was not interested in those treasures, they were priceless treasures to martial ancestors like him. Qin Yu heard the commotion and came back to his senses. He glanced at the martial progenitors who were fighting over the divine origin mirror and the demonic chi stick. Qin Yu stood quietly in place, not making a move. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Even though Qin Yu didn't make a move, some people couldn't hold themselves back. After an almost inaudible sound, silver spirit patterns lit up on the divine origin mirror. Crack, crack. Following this, the skeletons that were sealed by the martial progenitors flew out from their Sumeru rings. With the divine origin mirror as the center, all the bones gathered together and formed a human figure. The silver spirit patterns on the god of berserkers' body glowed brightly. However, the newly formed god of berserkers seemed to be in a sorry state. His body was covered in cracks, and his aura was not as strong as before. God of berserkers. He's not dead yet. The martial progenitors who were fighting immediately became alert and stared at the god of berserkers. They'd clearly seen how strong the barbarian god skeleton was from the previous battle. It could even hold its own against a half-step martial monarch. Among the martial progenitors, it was undefeatable. Even if they teamed up, they wouldn't be a match for it. I didn't expect a peerless martial monarch like the berserk dragon martial monarch to appear. The god of berserkers raised his head and looked at the skeleton that Xing Luo had left in. His eyes were filled with lingering fear. If the one who took out the ancient immortal badge wasn't the demon paragon, but him, if that was the case, then the one who was beaten up now was probably him. What kind of treasure is that ancient immortal badge? To be honest, the god of berserkers knew nothing about the ancient immortal badge. He only wanted the ancient immortal badge to help him comprehend the power of the great Tao. That was why he snatched it from the demon paragon. However, judging from the berserk dragon martial monarch's appearance, the ancient immortal badge was no ordinary treasure. Trying to leave? The god of berserkers suddenly came to his senses. His empty eyes were filled with killing intent. He didn't know why his remnant space had suddenly appeared. However, it clearly had something to do with the people who had come in. The sacred dragon vein had been refined, and the treasure that even a martial monarch wanted had been snatched away. Now, even his martial monarch body had almost been destroyed. All of this was caused by the martial progenitors. Naturally, the god of berserkers was filled with killing intent. Whoosh, whoosh. The god of berserkers held the divine origin mirror and poured the laws of heaven and earth into it. The ancient mirror glowed, and beams of dazzling silver light covered an area of 10,000 miles. Each beam of silver light turned into an ancient silver talisman. The silver talisman formation that had absorbed the blood of the martial monarchs appeared again. Rumble. After trapping the martial progenitors, the god of berserkers held the divine origin mirror and charged at them. A fierce battle broke out again. This time, the god of berserkers used the divine weapon to deal with the 6th and 7th rank martial progenitors. He completely suppressed the martial monarchs. The martial progenitors were killed by the god of berserkers. The god of berserkers showed no mercy to the cultivators of the ancient imperial palace or the beasts of the desolate area. The martial progenitors were killed one after another. As such, the cracks on the god of berserkers' body had mostly healed. His aura was more than 10 times stronger than before. After killing the last martial progenitor and absorbing the blood of the martial progenitor, the god of berserkers turned around and glanced at Qin Yu, who was flying in the sky. The god of berserkers had already noticed Qin Yu's presence when Qin Yu had appeared from the ground. However, the god of berserkers was confused when he saw Qin Yu's cultivation, who was only at the 5th rank martial god realm. He didn't even try to run or hide. He just stood there and watched them fight. It seems like your injuries are recovering well. Qin Yu observed the god of berserkers. He had not attacked previously, as he wanted the god of berserkers to absorb the blood of the martial progenitors to recover from his injuries. Otherwise, he would have to rely on his secret technique to recover in the future. Although the god of berserkers had yet to recover to his peak condition, it was not bad at all. My injuries are recovering well. It seems like there's something wrong with your brain. Die. The god of berserkers reached out his hand and tapped in the air. 100-jong-long wave was formed in the rift like the surface of water. Qin Yu was standing at the end of the wave. Dong! A dull crash could be heard. An obscure vortex of talismans appeared before Qin Yu. The god of berserkers' attack was devoured by the vortex. The god of berserkers was astounded, not only because his attack was blocked. Only now did he realize that, with a deep pit as the center, the void within a radius of tens of thousands of miles had been filled with spirit patterns at some unknown time. With a glimpse, the god of berserkers could tell that the killing formation was strong enough to deal with martial progenitors. However, the god of berserkers did not panic. Instead, he glanced at Qin Yu with a hint of disdain. A killing formation that's able to kill a martial progenitor realm cultivator is indeed impressive. However, do you really think you could defeat me with this formation? Do you know who I am? Chapter 258. Do you know who I am? The barbarian god looked at Qin Yu mockingly. Even a peak martial progenitor would have to be careful when dealing with the formation that Qin Yu had set up. However, he had been a martial monarch when he was alive. Trying to deal with him using the same method as an ordinary martial progenitor was simply courting death. Humph! Qin Yu laughed after hearing the barbarian god's words. He knew what the barbarian god meant, which was why he found it funny. What are you laughing at? The barbarian god's eyes darkened as he realized that Qin Yu's smile was filled with mockery. Then do you know who I am? Qin Yu looked at the barbarian god with a smile. The barbarian god was only a martial monarch. In terms of glory, the barbarian god was no match for Qin Yu. If the barbarian god wasn't overestimating himself, then what was he? I'm not interested in someone who's about to die. As a former martial monarch, how could the barbarian god tolerate being mocked by a mere martial god? Before he finished his sentence, the barbarian god's bones emitted a brilliant silver glow as he threw a punch at Qin Yu. It could be said that he had used his full strength in this punch. Compared to his previous attacks, it was completely different. Faced with the incoming destructive fist aura, Qin Yu's gaze was tranquil without the slightest fluctuation. As he waved his right hand, the spiritual runes in the sky became dazzling like stars. A loud explosion took place. The barbarian god's punch exploded, turning half of the sky into a destructive storm. However, the barbarian god tilted his head to the left as his eyes flickered. Qin Yu's figure had appeared at that place at an unknown time. His speed was so fast that it could be considered as teleportation. This kid, the barbarian god's hollow eyes flickered coldly. The ancient barbarian force flowed into his body from the divine origin mirror. The aura on his body immediately rose at an extremely high speed. The barbarian god was going all out to end the battle as soon as possible. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At that instant, a violent gust of wind appeared in the sky. The gust of wind was pitch black, as if it was covered in thunderclouds. It caused tens of thousands of miles of land to turn pitch black. An extremely terrifying killing intent was also floating in the void. It could not be seen, nor could it be touched, but it made the god of berserkers' heart tremble with fear. It was a deep sense of danger. The barbarian god's heart trembled. He felt that he somewhat underestimated Chinyu. The power of this killing formation was even more troublesome than he imagined. When the entire sky was covered by the black hurricane, the sky was covered by the black hurricane. Chinyu waved his right hand, and the 9 nether dragon spear appeared in his hand. Pitch-black dragon scales grew out of his flesh and blood. A strange and powerful aura emanated from Chinyu's body. Dragon Chi. Divine ability? A hint of surprise flashed through the barbarian god's eyes. Originally, he was only afraid of this killing array. But now, the pressure that Chinyu gave him was actually stronger than that killing formation. Whoosh! The 9 nether purgatory was suppressed by the dragon scales as Chinyu charged forward with the spear in his hand. The gust of wind in the sky moved together with Chinyu, as if the entire heavens and earth were responding to Chinyu. Humphdai! The god of berserkers harumphed coldly as his body emitted a strong, murderous intent. Regardless of how powerful the killing formation was, Chinyu was only a martial god. With his strength of the peak martial progenitor realm, he could easily crush Chinyu. Whoosh! The force of the ancient barbarian realm burst out from the god of berserker's body. Within the divine origin mirror, a beam of resplendent silver light streaked across the sky like a meteor and bombarded Chinyu's body with lightning speed. Unfortunately, the god of berserker's attack still missed. It only hit a blurred figure. Chinyu had already moved over 10 zhang away. The killing formation was carefully prepared by Chinyu. It contained the power of the Dragon Soul's space-time ability, which was enough to kill a peak martial progenitor realm cultivator. Whoosh! The god of berserkers wore a sinister look as he dashed forward with the godly origin mirror. As he dashed forward, several silver glows with a terrifying destructive force were fired in Chinyu's direction. Heaven battling Azure Dragon, Chinyu continued to flicker forward. When he was only over 10 zhang away from the god of berserkers, a blue dragon aura circled Chinyu's figure. His cultivation had reached the 6th-layer martial progenitor realm. What the hell? The god of berserkers' eyes widened in disbelief. Even with his knowledge, it was his first time seeing something like this. A secret technique that was able to improve one's cultivation by more than a level within an instant. Space-time ancient deadly formation. As soon as the heaven-battling Azure Dragon was executed, the dragon scales on the dragon soul glowed as it executed its space-time ability, summoning the heaven-destroying formation. The two combined into a terrifying killing formation encapsulating the god of berserkers' figure. The god of berserkers felt a great sense of danger as the two killing formations combined. God of berserkers' forbidden curse. The god of berserkers' figure emitted a silver glow. A magnificent glow was emitted from the godly origin mirror, which formed a mysterious silver seal. The seal was fired with an ancient aura, as if an ancient deity had descended upon the world, capable of eliminating all enemies in the world. Heaven-devouring dragon seal. Chinyu showed no sign of dodging the attack. His spear was unstoppable. A huge dragon-head ancient seal appeared and devoured the silver rune. How is this possible? The god of berserkers was astounded seeing this. The god of berserkers' forbidden curse was one of his strongest trump cards. With the enhancement of the godly origin mirror, he had once killed a martial monarch. Even though his strength had dropped significantly, he could still kill a martial progenitor with ease. But now, it was being devoured just like that. What kind of secret technique was the dragon seal to be so powerful? Bang! The long spear attack did not stop, piercing through the air. The power of the space-time ancient deadly formation and the ancient killing formation was gathered at one point before being fired. The god of berserkers shouted and used the power of the godly origin mirror to cast a series of powerful forbidden techniques to defend against Qin Yu's attack. However, Qin Yu, who had used the Azure Dragon Battle the Heavens and the Dragon God Tyrannical Body to form a double killing formation, was no match for him. He was now stronger than the god of berserkers. Boom! The god of berserkers was severely injured and was sent flying dozens of feet away. Even the silver talisman on his body began to crack, causing cracks to appear one after another. Die! Before the god of berserkers could stabilize his body, Qin Yu appeared behind the god of berserkers with the power of space-time around him. Qin Yu's body glowed as he executed the immortal sacrifice forbidden technique. Crack! A white stream of light flashed past silently. A thumb-sized hole appeared between the god of berserkers' eyebrows. The demon lord had destroyed half of his remnant soul, which was immediately destroyed. Qin Yu only wanted the emperor's body. Therefore, he did not think of extracting the god of berserkers' soul and killed him with the immortal sacrifice technique. If the god of berserkers saw through his intentions, it was very likely that he would disintegrate or self-destruct, leaving him with nothing. After successfully obtaining the emperor's body, Qin Yu sealed the godly origin mirror that had lost most of its spirituality. However, he did not leave the god of berserkers' ruins. He came to a mountain peak, opened a cave abode, and escaped inside. Although the god of berserkers' soul was completely destroyed, the ruins would not dissipate in a short period of time. Therefore, Qin Yu planned to completely refine the god of berserkers' remains in the ruins to prevent any accidents from happening. Also, he did not need to expose his trump cards when he encountered enemies in the future. Appear! Qin Yu flicked his finger, and an ancient cauldron appeared with raging flames burning inside. The god of berserkers' remains were thrown into the cauldron to be burned. At the same time, Qin Yu's mind moved. The ghost eye of extermination flashed, and the sealed Ghost King's soul appeared. It also entered the cauldron and gradually seeped into the god of berserkers' remains. Chapter 259. The reason why Qin Yu did not let the Ghost King's soul merge with the barbarian god's remains. He wanted to completely refine the Ghost Dao inheritance of the Ghost Emperor Zhentian's bloodline. If the Myriad Ghost Palace had a secret technique to find the skeleton Ghost King, then Qin Yu's identity would definitely be exposed. Although Qin Yu was no longer afraid of Bailey Xionghuang with his current strength. As long as he was well prepared, Qin Yu was confident that he could return to the 100 Martial Realm and avenge his humiliation. However, the Myriad Ghost Palace was only a small branch of the Ghost King. The fact that the ancient immortal medallion was able to make the Star Luo clan come all the way here showed how precious it was. Once Bailey Xionghuang sent back the news that he had the ancient immortal badge. In that case, what Qin Yu would have to face would not be a mere 10,000 Ghost Palace. Therefore, before he obtained the Golden Flame Heaven Incinerating Dragon, Qin Yu had to be careful and not expose his identity. As long as he subdued the Golden Flame Heaven Incinerating Dragon, the Skeleton Ghost King would refine the barbarian god emperor's body. Then, in the future, Qin Yu would not have to be as restrained as he was now. While Qin Yu was hiding in the cave and refining the barbarian god's remains and the Ghost King's ghost path, the experts of the 7 martial realms were in a mess because of the appearance of the barbarian god's remains. Countless martial ancestors gathered outside the barbarian god's remains. They were curious about the barbarian god's remains. However, what had truly attracted their attention was the commotion caused by Xing Luo, who had broken into this realm. It was likely that even a martial emperor would not be able to penetrate through the Yuan Qi at such a level. However, no one dared to enter the barbarian god's remains. They only gathered outside to watch. Why isn't he out yet? In the wildlands, among the crowd, Chun Zilian was protected by the experts of the ancient imperial palace. She looked at the broken space and the barbarian god's remains with worry in her eyes. The ancient imperial palace had suffered a great loss in the barbarian god's remains. 6 purple-robed martial ancestors had died. Almost 30 low-level martial ancestors had died. As for the thousands of disciples who came this time, it was needless to say. Only 20 to 30% of the disciples who entered the barbarian god's relics came out alive. More than 1,000 people had died. One should know that only 1 in 10,000 disciples would be able to enter the ancient imperial palace to cultivate. Each of them was a genius who had a chance to achieve the martial progenitor realm in the future. Now, all of them had died in the barbarian god's ruins. Of course, compared to the ordinary disciples, Chun Zilian was naturally worried about Qin Yu, who had saved her life. She was aware that Qin Yu was involved in the battle between the martial progenitors. If they hadn't appeared yet, the situation wouldn't be optimistic. It's been so long. Could that person have already escaped from the ruins? No, the blood divine Jade's senses have never been wrong. He is still in the remnant. Amidst the dense mass of martialists, there was also a force waiting for Qin Yu to appear. This force was naturally the celestial martial king manor. Zhao Junhai's death was sensed by the heavenly N martial emperor palace. Thus they had sent quite a number of peak martial progenitors. As for the black ice martial emperor palace, since Qin Yu did not search Li Tianquan's soul, he had killed him straight away. Therefore, the black ice martial emperor palace was still investigating the cause of Li Tianquan's death. Otherwise, Qin Yu would have to face 2 peak martial emperor palaces. Time passed in the blink of an eye. 5 days later, after seeing the barbarian god's ruins in dead silence for 5 days, without any sign of movement, finally, a powerful martial progenitor could no longer wait and sneaked into the barbarian god's ruins. With the first test, there were naturally more people who followed in. When the news that the barbarian god's ruins was no longer dangerous spread, countless martialists gathered outside the barbarian god's ruins immediately swarmed in. In the cave on the mountain, Qin Yu, who was meditating while merging the spirit of the demon emperor into his body, was startled. He could sense that there were dozens of powerful auras approaching him at an extremely fast speed. Their cultivations were all at the advanced martial progenitor realm, and there were even more than 10 peak martial progenitors. This group of people was not weak. Ordinary peak factions would not be able to send out such a force. In the ancient imperial martial world, other than the ancient imperial palace, only the top 5 martial emperor palaces could send out such a powerful force. Was it the celestial martial emperor palace? Or the black ice martial emperor palace? Qin Yu could clearly sense that they were coming for him, but he did not know where they came from. Dragon Soul, I'll go out and take a look. You're in charge here. Qin Yu stood up. At this moment, he could not allow any external force to interfere with the demon emperor's body. Don't worry. The dragon soul appeared from the ancient seal of the divine dragon. It grew to 5 feet tall and flew around the cauldron. The demon emperor had its own intelligence. Although the contract was signed with Qin Yu as the master, that was only under the condition that both parties had the same cultivation. When the demon emperor completely merged with the demon emperor's body, it would most likely try to take over. Therefore, Qin Yu asked the dragon soul to stay here and watch. With the dragon soul's current strength, even if the demon emperor was disloyal, it could still suppress it. A formation? Meanwhile, the martial progenitors of the celestial martial emperor palace came to a stop behind the mountain surrounded by clouds. They could vaguely sense that, with the mountain peak as the center, everything within 1,000 kilometers was filled with killing intent. Even though they were martial progenitors, their hearts skipped a beat when they sensed the dangerous aura. A powerful killing formation was set up here. The celestial martial emperor palace. As the clouds parted, Qin Yu appeared from the clouds and observed the martial progenitors of the celestial martial emperor palace. The situation was exactly as Qin Yu had predicted. 3 9th-layer martial progenitors, 12 8th-layer martial progenitors, and the rest were all 7th-layer martial progenitors. It's him. The eyes of the ninth-layer martial progenitor flickered when he saw Qin Yu. When Qin Yu appeared, the blood-godly jade that had merged with Zhao Juanhai's blood essence vibrated slightly. Although Qin Yu's appearance was slightly different from the figure inside the blood-godly jade. However, the blood-godly jade would never be wrong. Break the formation. Without wasting any time, the old man's murderous intent surged as he gave the order to attack. Following this, the rules of the heavens and earth became restless as a shocking battle took place. However, all of the law attacks disappeared without a trace the moment they struck the clouds. Qin Yu's silhouette had also disappeared into the clouds. What kind of formation is that? The people of the celestial martial emperor palace were astounded. Even with their martial progenitor's strength, they were unable to break the formation. If this were to be made known to the public, it would shock many people. Meanwhile, the martial progenitors who had entered the barbarian god's ruins were startled by the sudden battle and immediately flew toward it. Is that the celestial martial emperor palace? They are attacking the formation? What happened? Could it be related to the disappearance of the prince of the celestial martial emperor palace, who possessed a high-tier sacred flesh? Zhao Junhai didn't leave the ruins? More and more martial artists gathered and discussed animatedly. A formation? Chun Zilian, who had also arrived after hearing the news, also discovered the formation when she saw the mountain surrounded by clouds. She was startled as she immediately thought of Qin Yu. Previously, when Qin Yu had saved her, he had also used a formation to kill Li Tianxian and the others with ease. Could it be that the person inside was Qin Yu? Chapter 260. Looking at the clouds surging like an endless abyss, the mountain peak that swallowed all the nomological attacks. In the celestial end martial mansion, the old man's face became more and more gloomy. More and more onlookers gathered from all directions. If they couldn't end the battle quickly and capture Qin Yu, the celestial end martial mansion would lose a lot of face. Thinking of this, the old man's eyes flashed fiercely, and the Sumeru ring on his right hand flashed. An ancient talisman appeared. It was faint black in color, and ancient runes were emitted. Is that the Tao forbidding talisman? A shocked voice sounded. It was a 9th-level martial ancestor expert. This person was the patriarch of an ancient family. The reason why he was so surprised was because the Tao forbidding talisman had a great origin. The Tao forbidding talisman, as the name suggested, was a divine talisman that could seal the Tao of heaven and earth. It could be said that the Tao forbidding talisman was a true divine weapon that contained the power of the Tao. Everyone knew that the Tao of formations was formed by inscribing runes and drawing the power of heaven and earth. The Tao forbidding talisman was a divine item that could completely restrain the Tao of formations. It's actually the Tao forbidding talisman. In the Great Formation, Qin Yu, who was hiding in the clouds, suddenly had a dazzling light in his eyes. Qin Yu didn't expect that the celestial end martial mansion and the others would have the Tao forbidding talisman, which was extremely rare even in the heaven region. Obviously, these idiots didn't know the true use of the Tao forbidding talisman. They actually used the Tao forbidding talisman to break the killing formation he had set up. How laughable. Seal. The old man's face was ferocious. The divine talisman was unsealed, and it immediately turned into a ray of divine light, piercing through the void and entering the great formation. A mysterious fluctuation was emitted from the divine talisman. The killing intent that filled the world immediately froze. The old man sensed it, and his face became even more ferocious. He slowly raised his hand. Once the Tao forbidding talisman completely sealed the formation, he would immediately give the order to attack. However, under the gazes of the celestial, end martial mansion and the others, the killing intent of heaven and earth that had frozen instantly returned to normal, and the clouds continued to surge. What's going on? The old man's ferocious expression froze on his face, and he couldn't believe it. The Tao forbidding talisman had lost its effect. Not only the old man, Even the other members of the heavenly martial king manor and the countless surrounding martial warriors were incomparably astonished. Could it be that the Tao-forbidding talisman was a fake? How is this possible? Why did the Tao-forbidding talisman suddenly disappear? The old man came to his senses and immediately executed a secret technique. He didn't want to activate the Tao-forbidding talisman. However, he discovered that he had completely lost connection with the Tao Seal talisman. This caused them to be even more stunned. They had no idea what was happening inside the spirit formation. It's too much of a waste to give such a treasure to you. It's better that I keep it. Qin Yu grinned as he sealed the Tao Seal talisman within the clouds. The sealing Taoist talisman was not a fake. In fact, the power contained within it was extremely powerful. If it wasn't for the fact that the person he encountered was Qin Yu, perhaps the entire formation would have been completely sealed. As for why Qin Yu was so happy, it was because the true use of the Tao Seal talisman was to break those ancient formations and barriers. In his past life, his master had sealed off the mysterious forbidden area with a Tao Seal talisman. Qin Yu was able to sneak into the forbidden area and obtain the immemorial battle dragon art. Since Qin Yu had seen such a precious talisman, there was no way he would let it go. In the future, when his power recovers to its peak, Qin Yu will still go explore that mysterious forbidden area. Qin Yu had yet to reach the end of the forbidden area. There was still a core area inside the forbidden area that had yet to be explored. Even the immemorial battle dragon art, the 9 spirals berserk dragon art, the immortal reincarnation pill, and other godly arts and pills were not placed in the core area. It was obvious that the core area had something even more precious than the immemorial battle dragon art and the immortal reincarnation pill. Unfortunately, Qin Yu was not able to explore the core area in his past life, as he was besieged by Xing Luo and the others and died. He wondered if Xing Luo had entered the core area in the past 1,000 years. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Qin Yu collected his thoughts and put away the sealed Tao restriction talisman. With an intention, rolling clouds and mist immediately swept away like a wave. The area within 1,000 miles had turned into a sea of clouds. Divine Origin Mirror. Qin Yu flicked his finger. The ancient bronze mirror flew into the sky and turned into a bright moon that hung in the sky. Countless beams of silver light rained down like a storm, condensing into silver talismans in the void. This is not good. It's that ancient array. Could it be that it's still alive? They felt the blood in their bodies being burned and sucked away. Those cultivators who had passed by the barbarian god's ruins were all scared out of their wits. They frantically fled, not daring to stay for a moment. In an instant, the countless spectators who had gathered in the surroundings fled. They even fled out of the 1,000 miles of cloud sea and out of the barbarian god's ruins. Of course, not everyone was able to safely escape from the sea of clouds. The people of the heavens in Martial Palace were unable to escape and were trapped in the array formation. Whoosh! Qin Yu sprang forward with a long spear in his hand. Black dragon scales emerged from his body, surrounded by a blue dragon aura. His aura rapidly grew, as if a world-destroying demonic dragon was about to destroy the world. Dragon Chi? A mystical power of the dragon tribe? 6th layer martial progenitor realm? Who exactly is this guy? When the people of the heavenly extreme martial king's mansion sensed the cultivation level that Qin Yu displayed, they were all incomparably shocked. Qin Yu, whom they had initially thought to be a piece of cake, was actually a ferocious tiger that had concealed his strength. Now that he had revealed his fangs, he was extremely ferocious. Humph, trying to fight all of us on your own? You're courting death. The old man's face contorted as his eyelids twitched. He immediately turned around and charged at Qin Yu, who was charging at him. The other martial progenitors of the heavenly end martial palace followed closely behind with soaring murderous auras. Qin Yu showed no sign of fear when facing dozens of cultivators on his own. He continued to press forward. 9 serenities, purgatory, heaven-battling azure dragon, heaven-devouring dragon seal, demon eyes of destruction, soul-devouring curse, heavenly slaughter formation. Qin Yu executed the secret techniques that he hadn't used for a long time. One martial progenitor after another fell at his hands. With Qin Yu's current strength, he executed these secret techniques once again. The might he could unleash was several times stronger than the battle at the 100-Beast Palace. Whoosh! 15 minutes later, Qin Yu summoned the divine origin mirror. A beam of starlight condensed and hit the old man, penetrating his forehead. The divine origin mirror was a middle-grade divine artifact that could increase the power of secret techniques. For example, the heavenly stellar divine light that Qin Yu had just executed had its power increased by 30%. After capturing the old man's soul and searching his memories, Qin Yu knew why the people of the heavenly Martial Palace had come looking for him. Qin Yu took out the divine jade from his body and then crushed it. After the battle ended, Qin Yu waved his hand. The blood of the people of the heavenly Martial Palace gathered and merged into the cauldron in the cave and the barbarian god emperor's body. One could clearly see that as the blood of the dozens of martial progenitors merged into the cauldron, the barbarian god emperor's body glowed with divine light. Chapter 261. You're leaving? Seeing Qin Yu storing the cauldron into the ancient seal of the divine dragon, the dragon's soul also entered the ancient seal of the divine dragon. It's time to go. Qin Yu nodded his head slightly. Since the Celestial Martial Palace had a secret technique to sense that he was the one who killed Zhao Junhai, there must be a way for them to do so. In that case, there should be a way to find out about the deaths of these martial progenitors. When the time came, they would not let this matter rest. There was no need for Qin Yu to continue fighting with them. After taking out a conveying array diagram, Qin Yu immediately disappeared from the cave. As for the ancient killing array outside the mountain, Qin Yu did not remove it. If the Celestial Martial Palace's group came again, this killing array would be a gift to them. 2 hours later, Qin Yu, who had regained his appearance, left the barbarian god's ruins. Although Qin Yu had scared off many cultivators, there were still cultivators coming out from the barbarian god's ruins. Qin Yu's appearance wasn't too surprising. Junior brothers Shun Feng, Shun Zilian, and Shun Jiuxing, who had been guarding the barbarian god's ruins, immediately went up with joy. The ancient Imperial Hall's high-leveled martial ancestors heaved a sigh of relief. This time, the ancient Imperial Hall's disciples had suffered a great loss. Fortunately, Qin Yu, who had the divine physique, came out unscathed. This could be considered a blessing in disguise. Without any delay, the ancient Imperial Hall's high-leveled martial ancestors immediately brought Qin Yu and the others back to the ancient Imperial Hall. However, before he left, Qin Yu seemed to have sensed a gaze sizing him up. When Qin Yu's gaze landed on a figure, he withdrew his gaze and flew away. Since when did the Chan clan's siblings become so close to him? The person that Qin Yu was looking at was Zhou Yunlang, who had the innate sword physique from the Scarlet Sun Martial Palace. Zhou Yunlang muttered to himself as he watched Qin Yu leave with the ancient Imperial Hall's group. Young master, it might have something to do with the Black Ice Martial Palace. A martial god realm disciple of the ancient Imperial Hall said after hearing Zhou Yunlang's voice. Zhou Yunlang didn't bring anyone with him when he entered the barbarian god's ruins. However, that didn't mean that the Scarlet Sun Martial King Mansion didn't send anyone else into the ancient Imperial Hall. What do you mean? Zhou Yunlang asked in surprise. Previously, when I was in the ruins, I was able to kill a person from the Black Ice Martial Imperial Mansion. I heard that Li Tianxian seems to be preparing to attack Chun Jiuxing and Ye Tian in the relic. However, I don't know what happened. Chun Jiuxing and Su Mo came out safe and sound, but the people of the Black Ice Martial Royal Mansion were almost completely annihilated. The Martial God Realm disciple said. Could it be? Zhou Yunlang's eyes lit up. This news came at the perfect time. Make a trip back to the Royal Mansion, and let the Royal Mansion send this news to the Black Ice Martial Royal Mansion. A cold smile appeared on Zhou Yunlang's lips. It didn't matter whether the deaths of Li Tianxian and the others had anything to do with Qin Yu. He was going to blame this on Qin Yu. If there was a chance to destroy his divine body, Zhou Yunlang wouldn't show any mercy. Oh right, let the royal mansion send a message to the celestial martial royal mansion. Tell them that Zhao Junhai's death has something to do with Qin Yu. Just as the disciple was about to leave, Zhou Yunlang recalled the conflict between Zhao Junhai and Qin Yu. The weight of one top martial royal mansion and two top martial royal mansions were completely different. With the ancient imperial palace's current situation, they wouldn't offend two top martial royal mansions for Qin Yu. Once Qin Yu was eliminated, no one would be able to compete with him for the position of the ancient emperor's son. However, Zhou Yunlang didn't know that. His move was indeed a good one. Both Zhao Junhai and Li Tianxian had died at the hands of Qin Yu. Ancient Imperial Palace. The ancient emperor wants to see me? Not long after Qin Yu returned to his residence, Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian came again. That's right. Chen Jiuxing nodded and brought Qin Yu to the core of the ancient Imperial Palace. What's the matter? Although he asked this question, Qin Yu had already guessed the reason. It was most likely because of the ancient emperor's son. We're not too sure about the details, but it should be related to the ancient emperor's son's plan. Chen Zilian explained the details of the ancient emperor's son to Qin Yu. The situation was basically the same as what Qin Yu had learned from searching Zhao Junhai's soul. The ancient emperor would select the most talented geniuses and send them to the ancient emperor's secret dimension to nurture a few ancient emperor's sons. Qin Yu's eyes lit up. He had come to the ancient imperial palace for the golden flame, heaven-incinerating dragon in the ancient emperor's secret dimension. Now, the opportunity had finally arrived. However, the ancient emperor wanted to see him so soon. It seemed like the ancient emperor's situation wasn't optimistic. If he had time, the ancient emperor would have observed him first. After all, the ancient emperor's son was related to the next ancient emperor's successor. After flying for half an hour, Qin Yu followed Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian to the core area of the ancient imperial palace. Those who could come and go, there were basically top martial ancestor realm elders. Grandfather. In the core area of the ancient imperial palace, there was a single ancient palace that was majestic. Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian stood respectfully outside the palace. Come in. An old and dignified voice sounded. The door of the palace opened and rays of light shone out. It made one feel relaxed and refreshed, as if one's flesh and blood were being nourished. The three of them entered the palace. There is only one figure in the palace, sitting cross-legged in the rays of light. Although one couldn't see his face clearly, he exuded a mighty aura. Qin Yu raised his eyebrows slightly. The ancient emperor's cultivation was stronger than he had expected. He had already reached the half-step to martial emperor realm. However, although his aura was mighty, in his soul, he could clearly sense the aura of death spreading. This was a sign that his life had come to an end. The higher a martial artist's cultivation, the longer his life would be. However, no matter how long a martial artist lived, his life would come to an end. The lifespan was divided into the lifespan of the physical body and the lifespan of the soul. When the physical body's lifespan was exhausted, one could possess another body and be reborn. However, when the lifespan of the soul was exhausted, one would die. The ancient emperor's lifespan had reached the end of both his physical and soul lifespan. Unless he could find an opportunity to make a breakthrough and advance to the true martial emperor realm when his lifespan was completely exhausted. Otherwise, even a Daluo deity wouldn't be able to save him. When the rays of light dissipated, the ancient emperor was revealed. He wore an ancient robe and had a peaceful face. He looked like a kind old man. However, if one were to treat him as an ordinary old man, they wouldn't even know how they had died. There were many powerful martial artists in the ancient imperial palace. To be able to stand out and obtain the recognition of the three sovereigns, how could one be ordinary? You are very special. The ancient emperor's gaze, which was as deep as the starry sky, landed on Qin Yu. Special? Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian didn't know what their grandfather meant by his evaluation of Qin Yu. You don't have a true divine body, but your talent is comparable to a divine body. The ancient emperor spoke again. He had seen through Qin Yu's talent. Qin Yu raised his eyebrows slightly. It seemed that the ancient emperor had also cultivated some kind of secret technique. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to see through Lin Yun's talent. Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian were surprised. They couldn't help but glance at Qin Yu. It was the first time they had heard that someone who didn't have a divine body had a talent comparable to a divine body. Chapter 262. Are you willing to inherit my position and become the next ancient emperor of the ancient imperial hall? The ancient emperor retracted his gaze and didn't dwell on Qin Yu's aptitude. Then, he asked a shocking question. Become the next ancient emperor? Qin Yu was stunned. What's going on? Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian were stunned. They had thought that the ancient emperor had summoned Qin Yu to nurture Qin Yu into the next ancient emperor's son. They had never expected that the ancient emperor would pass the throne to Qin Yu. If this matter were to spread, the entire ancient imperial martial world would be shocked, let alone the ancient imperial hall. Why? Are you unwilling? The ancient emperor asked. May I ask why you chose me? Truth be told, Qin Yu was truly unwilling in his heart. He had only come to the ancient imperial hall for the golden flame, sky-incinerating dragon. However, if he were to inherit the throne, he would definitely be involved in the disputes of the ancient imperial martial world. Qin Yu didn't have the time or interest to care about the matters of the ancient imperial martial world. His goal was to recover his cultivation as soon as possible and return to the ancient imperial martial world to kill his enemies. This thought had become even more intense after meeting Xing Luo earlier. He wouldn't stay in the ancient imperial hall forever. In fact, he wouldn't stay in the 7 great martial worlds for long. Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian couldn't help but look at the ancient emperor. Evidently, Qin Yu's words had voiced the doubts in their hearts. The purpose of nurturing the son of the ancient emperor is to obtain the inheritance of the 3 emperors and inherit the throne. However, you are different. When you tested your aptitude, you had already triggered the inheritance of the 3 emperors. As the ancient emperor spoke, a stone statue appeared in his hand. Stone Emperor. Looking at the stone statue that was shining with golden light, Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian couldn't help but exclaim. Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian's eyes were filled with strong yearning and admiration. In the ancient imperial hall, there were 3 famous ancient emperors in the ancient imperial hall. They were known as the 3 ancient emperors. Stone Emperor was one of them. What kind of energy is this? When Qin Yu saw the golden light on the stone statue, he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. There were billions of cultivators in the heaven realm, and they all cultivated the path of spirit refinement and origin refinement, comprehending the path of heaven and earth. The so-called spiritual refinement naturally referred to absorbing spiritual qi and refining it into true essence. Whether it was the martial ancestor realm, the martial emperor realm, or the strongest emperor realm master, the origin energy in his body was all veritable essence energy. Although there were some unique cultivation paths, such as soul cultivation, body cultivation, and so on. However, without a doubt, spiritual refinement was the most orthodox method. The comprehension of the great Tao of heaven and earth was also based on the foundation of quintessential essence. The cultivation system of the 4 fundamental realms and the 9 realms of the martial Tao was to first cultivate true essence and then comprehend the great Tao. For example, an ordinary person who could not cultivate would not be able to directly comprehend the power of heaven and earth. However, Qin Yu could clearly sense the aura emitted by the stone statue. He was no longer walking the path of quintessential essence. In other words, there was an additional trace of wholehearted strength in the path of true essence, although that trace of strength was weak and undetectable. However, to Qin Yu, who had once stepped onto the Emperor realm, it was like a ray of light in the darkness, extremely dazzling. The trace of strength contained in the stone statue was a bit like, "This aura seems to be somewhat similar to the energy fluctuations of Fairy Shualon and the ancient immortal token." The dragon soul in the ancient dragon seal also sensed it. Thoughts flashed in Qin Yu's mind. He also had the same feeling. Fairy Shualon's origin was a mystery, and the ancient immortal token could tempt the Sky Suppression, Ghost Emperor, and Star Luo. Perhaps he could find out something about the origins of Fairy Shualon and the ancient immortal token from the ancient Imperial Palace. You can go back and think about it carefully. If you are willing, you can come and find me. If not, then you should leave as soon as possible. With a move of his palm, the stone statue disappeared in his hand. The ancient Imperial Palace's, Qin Yu said. Leave directly? Qin Yu was stunned. If that was the case, there was no room for him to consider it all. No matter if he was the ancient emperor in the future or not, he had to enter the ancient emperor's secret realm. Grandfather, even if junior brother Shinfeng triggered the stone emperor's inheritance, I'm afraid that he won't be able to convince the other elders with his cultivation. After Qin Yu left, Chun Jiuxing regained his senses and asked in confusion. He wasn't jealous of Qin Yu, but he was just stating a fact. The ancient Imperial Palace had always respected the strong. If it wasn't for the elders of the ancient Imperial Palace and the powerful forces of the ancient Imperial Palace, then, even if Qin Yu was the ancient emperor, he would definitely be overthrown. It was only a matter of time before the ancient Imperial Palace split, and the ancient Imperial Martial World had its own king. I have my own plans for this. You guys can go and cultivate, the ancient emperor said faintly. Chun Jiuxing and Chun Zilian didn't dare to ask any more questions and left with doubts. After Qin Yu, Chun Jiuxing, and Chun Zilian left, a crystal appeared in the ancient emperor's hand. True Yuan infused into the crystal, and it emitted a bright light. Images flashed past quickly. Those images were the scenes of the battle between the 100 Beast Palace and the Myriad Ghost Palace. The ancient emperor didn't see Qin Yu's disguise, but that didn't mean that he couldn't find out about Qin Yu's background. One had to know that Qin Yu was able to participate in the ancient Imperial Palace's selection. It was because his senior brother, Lin Chongqing, had personally gone to look for the ancient emperor. Since the ancient emperor knew Lin Chongqing, it wouldn't be a problem for him to find out about Qin Yu's identity in the 100 Beast Palace. Qin Yu? Qin Yu? This name. The ancient emperor muttered softly as he looked at Qin Yu's figure on the crystal. Qin Yu's name was actually the same as the name of the unrivaled sovereign in the past. More importantly, Qin Yu seemed to have a close relationship with Lin Chongqing. Could this be a coincidence? This is a little strange. In the palace, Qin Yu was thinking about the ancient emperor's final words. He had a feeling that the ancient emperor really wanted him to succeed the position of the ancient emperor. It was as if the ancient emperor wasn't worried about whether he could secure the position of the ancient emperor in the future. It is indeed strange. The dragon soul also felt strange. Qin Yu thought for a while and threw this thought to the back of his mind. It didn't matter what the ancient emperor was planning. Anyway, he was about to enter the ancient emperor mystic realm. As long as he could get the golden flame heavenly dragon, nothing else mattered. A day later, Qin Yu, who was well prepared, went to look for the ancient emperor. In less than half a day, the ancient emperor gathered the elders and announced his plan to nurture the ancient emperor's son. They started to discuss the candidates for the ancient emperor's son. The ancient emperor had already decided to let Qin Yu succeed the position of the ancient emperor. However, the rules of the ancient emperor mystic realm couldn't be ignored. Of course, this was also because the ancient emperor was nearing the end of his life. Just as Qin Yu was making all the preparations to enter the ancient emperor mystic realm, two uninvited guests came to the ancient emperor mystic realm. Bam bam. Someone knocked on the door of the palace. Qin Yu opened the door, and a few elders in purple robes appeared outside. Disciplinary hall. Qin Yu was surprised to see the insignia on the elders in purple robes. The disciplinary hall had a special position in the ancient emperor mystic realm. They could punish disciples and elders. Shenfeng, follow us to the disciplinary hall. The leading elder in purple robes said indifferently. What's the matter? Qin Yu raised his eyebrows. He felt that things weren't as simple as they seemed. The Black Ice Martial King and the Celestial Martial King accused you of killing their disciples. They want you to go to the disciplinary hall. The elder in purple robes said. Chapter 263. The Black Ice Martial King and the Heavenly Martial King. Yu did not expect that at the crucial moment of entering the ancient Emperor Mystery Realm, the two top kings' palaces would come to the ancient Imperial Palace to deal with him. No wonder the Punishment Hall would send out several purple-robed elders. Follow us. Without further ado, the purple-robed elders brought Yu to the Punishment Hall. Outside the Punishment Hall, many elders and disciples had already gathered. Obviously, they had heard the news and came to watch. In the spacious Punishment Hall, there were rows of purple-robed martial ancestors standing on both sides. On the main seat, there was a white-haired old man who did not smile. This person was the hall master in charge of the Punishment Hall, Xiaobo. Below the main seat, there were two figures sitting. One was wearing a golden robe with a dignified face. It was the Heavenly Martial King, Zhao Mingtian. The second person was wearing a white robe. His body was emitting a cold aura that froze the void. The Black Ice Martial King, Li Huanglong. With the arrival of Yu, everyone in the Punishment Hall looked at Yu. Facing those dignified gazes, Yu did not change his expression and walked to the center of the Punishment Hall indifferently. Shunfeng, you should know about the matter. The Heavenly Martial King and the Black Ice Martial King accused you of killing Zhao Junhai and Li Tianxian. Do you have anything to say? Xiaobo spoke with a dignified voice, with the aura of a superior who controlled life and death. This is purely groundless, Yu said indifferently. Although with his current strength, he was not afraid of Zhao Mingtian and Li Huanglong. But he would not be stupid enough to admit it directly. Groundless. A voice with strong, killing intent appeared. Zhao Mingtian's gaze was sinister like a poisonous snake, as if he wanted to devour Yu. It was Zhao Mingtian who had seen that figure in the blood god Jade. The moment he saw Yu, he was almost certain. Yu was the one who killed Zhao Junhai. Whether it's groundless or not, we'll know with a test. Li Huanglong also spoke sinisterly. The air was faintly colder. With that, Li Huanglong flipped his right hand, and a strange stone appeared in his hand. Countless Dao runes circled around the strange stone like layers of clouds and mist. It was quite mysterious. Heavenly Soul Stone. Xiaobo's expression changed slightly. It seemed that Li Huanglong and Zhao Mingtian had come prepared and did not want the disciplinary hall to intervene. Heavenly Soul Stones were a kind of wondrous stone that naturally contained soul power. It was rumored that the Heavenly Soul Stone had been refined with a secret technique. As long as one came into contact with it, one would be able to see the memories in one's soul. Clearly, Li Huanglong wanted to use the Heavenly Soul Stone to probe Yu's memories. Put your hand on it. Li Huanglong ordered indifferently as he flicked his finger. The Heavenly Soul Stone floated in front of Yu. Yu chuckled upon hearing this. Using the Heavenly Soul Stone to probe would indeed not harm one's soul like using soul searching and soul refining. However, doing so would be equivalent to exposing all of his secrets. Yu would never agree to such a thing. Did you not hear what I said? Put your hand on it. An icy aura burst out from Li Huanglong's figure when he saw Yu remaining still. At that instant, the entire disciplinary hall was filled with an icy aura with him at the center. Even the purple-robed martial progenitors could feel chills running down their spines and immediately defended themselves with the rules of the heavens and earth. Trying to order me around? You're not worthy enough. Yu remained in place. Yu, however, appeared to be completely unaware of the bone-chilling coldness that filled the entire void. His expression remained the same. With the outstanding aura of the dragon god tyrannical body, he could easily ignore the icy aura. This kid. Seeing this, Zhao Mingtian's eyes flickered with astonishment. Even a martial progenitor could not resist the icy aura emitted by Li Huanglong's 9 frigid mysterious ice. Qin Yu, a mere martial god, actually acted as if nothing had happened. Did Qin Yu have some kind of incredible artifact? Die. Li Huanglong's eyes turned cold as he made his move. A 10-zhong long, icy hand appeared in the air and grabbed at Qin Yu. Xiaobo tried to stop it. However, considering the current situation of the ancient imperial palace, he held himself back. The death of the two princes of the royal palaces, who were peerless geniuses with high-tier sacred flesh, was not a trivial matter. It would cause the ancient imperial palace to fall into chaos. Therefore, it was not a bad idea to let Qin Yu test it out. If it wasn't Qin Yu, everything would be fine. However, if it was Qin Yu, the two royal palaces would be able to deal with it. Qin Yu had no intention to resist Li Huanglong's attack. He remained still in place. Crack! However, as the icy hand was about to make contact with Qin Yu, a brilliant glow swept past. The icy hand immediately shattered into pieces and scattered in the air. The icy aura in the disciplinary hall immediately vanished. This force, Li Huanglong and Zhao Mingtian's expressions changed slightly when they saw the multicolored light. They looked at each other. Ancient Emperor, Xiaobo, stood up abruptly and looked at the person who had appeared out of nowhere. That person was the Ancient Emperor. The Ancient Emperor has come out of seclusion. The elders and disciples in the disciplinary hall were in an uproar when they saw the Ancient Emperor. Ever since the news spread that the Ancient Emperor was nearing the end of his lifespan. In the past few decades, the Ancient Emperor had never shown himself and had never seen anyone. This had caused all sorts of rumors to spread in the ancient imperial martial world. However, no one had expected the Ancient Emperor to come out of seclusion today. Ancient Emperor, even Li Huanglong and Zhao Mingtian greeted the Ancient Emperor. Regardless of the Ancient Emperor's condition, they would not go against him openly. Since when did an outsider have the right to punish a disciple of the ancient imperial palace? The Ancient Emperor's deep eyes were filled with majesty, and his benevolent face was filled with a sense of authority. I was rash previously. I hope the Ancient Emperor can forgive me. Li Huanglong's face darkened. He had not expected the Ancient Emperor to not give him any face and reprimand him. However, this lad is related to the cause of my son's death. I hope the Ancient Emperor can deal with him fairly. Li Huanglong raised his head, and his expression returned to normal. However, he was still concerned about Qin Yu. Ancient Emperor, the Black Ice Martial King has brought the heavenly soul stone here. We will be able to verify whether my son was killed by this lad. Zhao Mingtian also opened his mouth and added, "There is no need to use the heavenly soul stone to verify that your son was not killed by Shinfeng. He was killed by a beast." The Ancient Emperor looked at the heavenly soul stone and said, "We saw it with our own eyes." Chun Jiuxing and Chun Zilian walked in from the crowd of elders and disciples outside the hall. However, someone from the ancient imperial palace sent a message before he died. He said that he saw my son killed by this lad. Li Huanglong frowned and did not let the matter rest. Ancient Emperor, we are only letting this lad use the heavenly soul stone to check his memory. It will not cause any harm to him. Do you have to stop us? Zhao Mingtian asked. Are you questioning me? The Ancient Emperor's face became more serious. I don't dare to question you. I just want to know the cause of my son's death. Li Huanglong and Zhao Mingtian did not back down. What if I don't agree? The Ancient Emperor's voice gradually turned cold as rays of light appeared behind him. At this moment, the law enforcement hall was dead silent. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Everyone looked at the Ancient Emperor, Zhao Mingtian, and Li Huanglong in shock. Were the ancient imperial palace and the top ancient imperial palace going to fall out? Chapter 264. Then please forgive us. Suddenly, Li Huanglong and Zhao Mingtian pounced forward like ferocious beasts that had been released from their cages. Violent laws of the heavens and earth rampaged in the void, causing one's heart to tremble. The power of a peak 9th rank martial ancestor was fully displayed at this moment. Li Huanglong and Zhao Mingtian's attacks seemed to be directed at Qin Yu. However, they were actually targeting the ancient emperor. Suppress. The ancient emperor roared as thousands of rays of light exploded. Each ray of light contained vast laws of the heavens and earth, instantly piercing through the void. Li Huanglong and Zhao Mingtian's laws of the heavens and earth were directly shattered by the rays of light. A loud crash was heard. Li Huanglong and Zhao Mingtian were both sent flying, crashing heavily into the barrier of the punishment hall. Even the restrictions and barriers of the ancient palace were directly shattered. Ancient Emperor, we have offended you today. We will personally come to apologize in the future. Li Huanglong and Zhao Mingtian's voices could be heard as a whole appeared in the disciplinary hall. The two of them had already broken through the void and left the Sumeru realm. Qin Yu's eyes flickered as he looked at the two people who had disappeared. Although Li Huanglong and Zhao Mingtian had been sent flying, they were not injured. They had only exchanged blows for a short while and immediately fled. This behavior was like, "This matter is over. Let's disperse." After saying this, the ancient emperor waved his sleeve and disappeared with Qin Yu and the other two. The Black Ice Martial King and the Celestial Martial King were defeated in a single move. This strength is too strong. Haha. As expected, the rumor about the ancient emperor's lifespan not being long is completely a rumor. Do you think the ancient emperor's cultivation has already touched the martial emperor realm? If that's the case, then our ancient imperial palace will be the only force in the 7 great martial realms with a martial emperor realm expert. The elders and disciples of the ancient imperial palace were shocked when they saw the ancient emperor's great power. Whoosh whoosh. In the sky of the ancient imperial city, 2 figures broke through the void and fled. They only stopped in the void when they were tens of thousands of miles away. Sure enough, the rumors are true. That old fellow's time limit is approaching. These 2 people were Li Huanglong and Zhao Mingtian, who had come out of the ancient imperial palace. Hee, it's time for a change in the position of the ancient emperor. Li Huanglong and Zhao Mingtian had uncontrollable excitement on their faces. After discussing for a while, they immediately flew away. It was impossible to overthrow the ancient imperial hall with the strength of a single Wang mansion. They also needed allies. Cough, cough. Inside the glorious palace, the ancient emperor, who had appeared with Qin Yu and the others, suddenly coughed violently, his face pale. "Grandfather, are you injured?" Seeing this, Chun Jiuxing and Chun Zilian turned pale with fright. "It's fine." Rays of light gathered from all around the palace. The ancient emperor's expression returned to normal. Is this an old injury from failing to break through to the martial emperor realm? Qin Yu could tell that the ancient emperor's injuries were not caused by his fight with Li Huanglong and the ancient emperor. "Tomorrow, I will open the ancient emperor mystery dimension," the ancient emperor said after suppressing his injuries. Tomorrow? Chun Jiuxing and Chun Zilian were confused. According to the plan, the ancient emperor's son's plan would only begin half a month later. Could it be because of the Black Ice Martial Mansion and the Celestial Martial Mansion? Qin Yu asked. That's right. The ancient emperor nodded slightly. Weren't they repelled? Chun Jiuxing and the ancient emperor were still confused. From the fact that the two of them retreated immediately after the fight, I'm afraid that their real purpose of entering the ancient imperial hall is not to deal with me. But Qin Yu looked at the ancient emperor. They must be testing my condition. The ancient emperor said. Because of this, the ancient emperor decided to open the ancient emperor mystery dimension in advance. Could it be that they really dare to rebel? Chun Jiuxing and the ancient emperor's faces changed drastically. If that was the case, the ancient emperor martial world would be completely changed. It's not that they dare to rebel. I'm afraid that they will definitely rebel. Qin Yu said, in the previous fight, Li Huanglong and Zhao Mingtian should have already found out that the ancient emperor was weak. Moreover, no one in the ancient imperial hall had been recognized by the ancient emperor. Therefore, the experts in the ancient imperial hall were all in a state of disunity. They would definitely not let go of such a great opportunity. This is the map of the ancient emperor mystery dimension. Take it back and study it carefully. The ancient emperor took out an ancient map and waved his hand to signal Qin Yu and the other two to leave. Ancient emperor. After Qin Yu and the other two left, the ancient emperor flicked his finger. A figure appeared in the palace like a ghost. It was a martial ancestor who was wearing black armor. Even his face was covered by the armor. Have you found out about the spies that infiltrated the palace and the people who have already betrayed us? The ancient emperor's voice was cold and indifferent. As the master of the ancient imperial hall, he was naturally aware of the ancient imperial martial world's movements, since he had already shed all pretense of cordiality. In that case, there was no need for him to turn a blind eye and pretend that he didn't know anything. Yes, I have. I can take control anytime. The black-armored martial ancestor's voice was emotionless, as if he was a puppet. When the ancient emperor mystery dimension opens, don't leave anyone who is suspicious alive. The ancient emperor ordered. Yes, the black-armored martial ancestor received the order and disappeared from the palace. The next day, early in the morning, Qin Yu, Chun Jiuxing, Chun Zilian, Zhou Yunlang, and the other disciples of the ancient imperial hall. The 10 strongest and most talented geniuses were gathered in the forbidden area of the ancient imperial hall. The ancient emperor mystery dimension was left behind by the 3 ancient emperors. There are many traps and restrictions inside. If you're not careful, you can lose your life. If you're afraid, you can leave now. In front of a white stone well that was 10 feet wide, the ancient emperor placed his hands behind his back and looked at Qin Yu and the others. No, they had been selected from the tens of thousands of disciples to participate in the plan of the ancient emperor's son. Naturally, none of the 10 of them would have any thoughts of retreating at this moment. Very well, go in. The ancient emperor took out a golden seal. The seal glowed and emitted a golden glow onto the ancient well. Immediately, above the ancient well, an ancient door that was about 10 feet wide appeared. As the door was opened, a misty mist could be seen inside, preventing anyone from seeing what was inside. However, Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul were extremely excited when they sensed the aura emitted from the door. At that moment, even if they did not use their secret techniques, they could still clearly sense it. Behind the door was the real aura of the dragon tribe. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Following the ancient emperor's voice, Qin Yu and the others immediately flew into the sky and entered the ancient door in the blink of an eye. As soon as Qin Yu entered the ancient door, he could clearly sense a spatial force encapsulating him. The next moment, Qin Yu appeared in front of an enormous building complex. The buildings were over a few thousand feet tall, as if they were built for ancient giants. This was the world within a world of the ancient imperial hall, the ancient emperor mystery dimension. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.